No spillers?
No.
Professional over here, dude.
That was a small looking pour, Matt.
Got some heady stuff going on Richard's there.
It's a special
And Matt's.
glass for a special beer, man.
Oh, yeah? Does that mean you're drinking again?
A little bit.
Yeah. All right. This episode will be a lot more fun than last time then. Matt's back. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Sunday.
Cheers.
Well, I'll kick this off. I'm drinking the Pronghorn Pilsner from Wind River Brewing. Picked this up a few weeks ago after a backpacking trip. It's just like your classic Pilsner. A little bit of dryness, nothing crazy, 5% alcohol. But it's actually really crispy and flavorful and really refreshing when it's hot outside. So there's also a cool one. For every 6-pack they sell, they donate $1 to the Wildlife for Tomorrow Foundation. That is like trying to help the pronghorn species because they've been in like a rapid decline. There was like some kind of virus that they got and a lot of them died. And they also get hit by cars and stuff. And there's a lot of roads being built out in Wyoming because of all the oil refineries and things. And that like obviously messes up with their migration patterns and stuff like that. So yeah, I thought that was pretty cool. So
Love the branding. Yeah.
yeah.
Humans suck.
I guess the pronghorn runs so fast because like up until 200 years ago, there used to be like a North American cheetah that would chase them around. That was their main predator. So that's why they still run so fast.
That's why they all look skittish.
Mm-hmm.
Must be somewhere.
I wonder if that virus, there's something that's affecting the white-tailed deer in the East Coast. It's moving its way towards the East Coast. I forgot what it's called.
Yeah, that one is, what's that one called?
I forgot.
Yeah, I forget,
but like, yeah, it's like starting to like work its way further and further.
Probably tickle and everything else is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's like super fatal too. Like if it passes to human beings, we're fucked.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
It's like 90% death rate.
Let's see if I can look it up real quick.
Although
it's like something. It's not like a flesh-eating virus. It's something.
Oh, it's a mass wasting thing?
Yeah,
Similar. Yes, that's a chronic wasting disease. That's
chronic
what it's
wasting.
called.
There you go.
Not mass wasting. Yeah.
And elk in Colorado as well.
But
Wait,
That
Yeah.
does sound fun.
We got a tick-borne illness that's coming in from Europe at the moment, which makes you vegetarian. Makes you allergic to hemoglobin. So
Crazy.
fish and vegetables. That's it.
I enjoy getting wasted, but not chronic waste. You know, that's just every now and then.
That would be an awesome beer name.
Chronic waste.
Chronic wasting.
Yeah. Wasted on the chronic.
All right, Matt. So what are you drinking?
Well, my photography buddies will make fun of me for this, but it's the Reverend, which is from Avery Brewing. It's a 10% Belgian quad.
That's the Matt Payne go-to.
It is the Matt Payne go-to.
Seen you drink all of those.
So it's for efficiency.
I've been known. No, it's so delicious.
Matt, is that because it's Sunday?
Exactly. But also, I would be drinking this if it was Saturday or Friday.
I know. It was a bad attempt at a joke.
Nice. So, how does it feel to be drinking again?
It's good, although
Besides amazing.
I'm not doing it like you are. I'm not going overboard.
Did you stop for the Colorado?
Well, I have to get back into drinking shape for my fall color trip because
It is mandatory.
It is. Yep.
Jamie Geekus, Brent Dorsman, Kane Engelbert.
Yeah, if I'm not drinking by then, it'll be bad news. Be like one beer and I'm passed out. So
yeah, it'll hit you hard.
Gotta get that liver in tip-top form.
That's right.
Got to prime the tank.
It's like preparing for the Olympics.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard work. It's hard
Training.
work. Yeah.
What are you
16-ounce
drinking, Richard?
girls.
Is that like
I have
a
a-
hazy IPA?
Yeah, it's a double IPA. It's
Nice.
called Up the River, and it's
Nice.
a brewery in a town in my city called Fine Balance. Something I look for in my photography. But it's 8%. It's got malted barley, wheat, and honey, and there's quite a few hops. Nectaron. I don't
That's a
even know.
good
I never
one.
heard
That
of
one's from New Zealand.
Nectaron, Nelson, Savin,
Yeah, that one's
And
also from New Zealand.
Riwaka as well.
Yeah, all three of those.
Yeah, so the honey gives it just a touch of sweetness as a double IPA, so it's got a nice taste.
Yeah, honey is actually surprisingly nice in IPAs. You would think it'd be like
It's
a little bit overpowering, but it's usually just a subtle.
It's very subtle, but just enough to make it slightly sweet.
Yeah, round it off a little bit, round
Yeah.
off the finish.
I know it's only 8%. You guys teased me last time because you guys were drinking 15% beers, and I felt like a lightweight.
Oh, you should have seen us the next day. That's
Yeah.
not good. No, that sounds great.
Well,
Sounds
it's great to have you back on too, Richard. I think your episode was the most viewed episode we've ever had. So for some
Oh, that's
reason,
pretty
people really liked it, I think.
Thanks. That's interesting. Who knows why that is? It probably is not because of me, but just the way it went.
If it's
Certainly
YouTube-
not because of us.
If it's
Oh, I
YouTube,
missed-
it's all about the thumbnail and the title. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know Mike, I missed Mike wasn't on that one, but Paul was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, did you title it "This Photographer Got Wasted on Camera and You'll Never Believe What Happened Next"?
That works.
We titled it Dick's Picks.
Well, yeah, Eric jumped into the dick stuff, right? So threw me off a little bit.
it worked. It worked.
It's funny. It's very funny. It's all good material for funny stuff. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, all those views were coming from some population that was interested.
Yeah, we tapped into a new audience.
that's why
I don't know what it
the
was.
search. That's why the search thing probably made it that way. Yeah, people were.
Yeah,
searching.
brought in the demographic.
Exactly.
Eric's got these really subtle ideas for upping the viewing.
So I brought in one from close to home here. This is one called Momo, which is out of it's an Italian Pilsner out of Wayward Lane, which is in Schoharie, New York.
What was it called again?
Momo by Wayward Lane.
Wayward Land.
Yeah.
I
So
haven't heard of that one.
yeah, they're kind of like it's not quite halfway between Albany and Syracuse, but it's like kind of like Utica neighborhood, so to speak. So, but they do some great stuff. I've really enjoyed most of the stuff that they've been creating.
Could you hold it up again?
Cool.
I love the graphic design
Yeah.
on that.
Oh, sorry, the can. Yeah,
Well, yeah, I can. Yeah, cool. There's so many amazing graphic designs. It reminds me back when we used to go to look at albums, and the beautiful artwork. And when you go to the bottle store, there's like this amazing array of designs. Some are really good, and some are kind of.
Well, now they can just use AI, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
you might see mass photographs on a beer can.
That's right.
Are you saying is
Right.
that photos are AI?
What about you, Mike? You're always a wild card.
Well, yeah, I'm sticking NA. So this is the Go Brewing Jab Jab Grapefruit IPA. I just got this one in the other day. So yeah, another non-alcoholic. It doesn't say on the can, but I looked it up real quick. It's Centennial and Citra hops. Pretty good. I've liked all the Go Brewing stuff. Go Brewing, Athletic Brewing tend to be the best as far as I've not NAs anyway, as far as I've been in my experience. So it's pretty good. Definitely a lot of grapefruit flavor to it. Good carbonation, which is another thing that's often lacking in the NA beers is, they can be flat really quick. So this has got some, it didn't pour with a lot of head, but it's definitely got some good carbonation. So a good mouthfeel. So pretty good so far. My first time having it.
Where are they out of, Mike?
Go Brewing is out. I was just looking at this. Illinois. Naperville, Illinois.
Mike,
Yeah.
did you go NA after my episode? You're like, oh, I should.
No. It was shortly after we recorded for F-Stop, though.
Oh.
It was right after that. So yeah, it's been since like, I don't know, January.
Nice.
Yeah.
He drinks occasionally. Just
I do occasionally. Basically when I'm out of town.
He was embarrassing himself too much on the show, so he's got to be careful now.
Exactly.
You should have seen what we cut out. Holy smoke.
Right. Yeah.
Get kicked off YouTube.
Yeah. The cutting room floor is incriminating.
Mess, yeah.
Where you're still holding on to that stuff, though, Eric, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to create a compilation later on to just totally burn him one day.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
outtakes,
Blackmail.
right? You can have outtakes.
You can put those black boxes in the video, too, and kind of hide them.
The black box wouldn't have to be that big, though.
Yeah. Little
Yes.
minuscule.
Yeah, so Eric, when are you going to do a bloopers reel?
I mean, that is the show pretty much.
Oh,
Exactly.
I set him up.
Yeah,
for
all the
that.
stuff that we cut out is the serious stuff. Like,
Right.
I got the assist on that goal, right?
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, Tim. Well, thanks for coming on. What did you decide to share with us?
Bit of a political one. It's called Freoch. And it's 5% lagery IPA, so quite carbonated. Nice, but it's brewed from heather. And all the beer in Scotland before the English started playing around with things is all made from heather. And when the English came up, they said, we're not making any money out of these. So they banned heather beer and made everybody buy English hops. But these guys at the local William Brothers Brewery decided to start it up again. So they mix it. It's heather, ling heather, and hops together. So it's got a bit floral tones to it. But it's really nice, really drinkable.
That's great.
Oh, you're already almost
Nice.
done. Yeah, that is drinkable. Well, like 5 minutes.
Not finished yet.
Oh, okay.
More to be done.
What is
What,
the...
what
That's the
brewery
name.
was that again?
Freoch. Freaoch. I quite like this sort of
Is it?
What's the name of the brewery there?
William Brothers,
Williams Brothers. I got it.
produce of Scotland.
Tim,
Does
do you ever
the
get
name,
tired of doing the accent?
Nah. As long as I don't do it in front of the locals.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does the name translate as anything? Do you know?
Heather.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Okay.
Oh, Freyak is
Cool.
Is that a
I
Gaelic or
believe
something?
so. Yeah, I think so. I only know it in the
Nice.
names of a few mountains. That's about as far as my Gaelic goes.
Celtic.
Gaelic in Scotland, Gaelic in Ireland
Okay.
for some reason. Or
That
Gaelic.
looks like a big bottle. Is that a quart?
It's a half litre,
Oh, half liter. Okay.
Yeah, pint.
all metric strangeness.
Mine are
That's
like
good.
473
another one coming
milliliters.
up
Is
after.
what?
Yeah, it's not
Okay,
far
I
off,
think
is
that's
it?
like a little less than a pint. That's like how it is in New Zealand and Australia too. They're like slightly smaller cans.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Oh, we still have pints in the UK. We haven't got rid of them since leaving Europe. It'll go wrong at some point.
That's a whole other show, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
All right. Well, I have some burning questions for you, Tim. Who is your favorite contributor for On Landscape?
Ooh.
That's a really hard one. I like Theo Bosboom because I always have a good chat with Theo. He's a little bit of a humble, gentle giant of a man, built like a brick shithouse, Nordic Viking style. But he's just got a good idea for photography and how to be creative. And he's always good for a chat. I've met him at the Wildlife Photographer of the Year awards a few times because I helped judge the competition. And so I get invited to the meal, the sit-down award ceremony at the Natural History Museum, which is great. And Theo's been there a few times because he's got an eye for a creative picture, something that'll attract the attention of judges. So he knows what he's on about, and he writes really well. So he's got the full package, I think.
He's an attorney. He's an attorney, right?
Yeah, it
it
is.
was. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, or was, yeah.
Yeah, he's full-time photographer now, but
Yeah.
well, cool. We can just end the episode right there then. That wasn't the right answer. So
You're like Theo as well.
yeah, Theo's cool.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, his work's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
Yeah,
amazing
I
how
saw
somebody from a country as flat and pretty boring as he comes from can be so creative. And I love his
Oh, you have
pictures
to
of
be
Iceland.
creative.
The tourism project for Iceland was fantastic.
I was always immediately a fan. I was immediately a fan of his, and then I saw him presented out of Chicago a couple of years after I discovered his work. So he's a great guy, very creative.
So was On Landscape like your brainchild, or were you doing that with somebody else before, or how did you get involved with that?
It's a funny story because I used to run a few magazines in a previous life. I was
Printed?
I was an engineer, printed magazines. Yeah, I moved to Aberdeen doing a PhD, and there was nobody doing listings magazines for local bands, and so I thought, well, I'll do it myself. It's a good way of getting free records off shops and things. So I put a few adverts in, did all the graphic design for it. So I taught myself how to use the packages to do that sort of stuff. And then when I moved to Manchester to do the other half of my PhD, there was already quite a lot of listings down there. So I just started working for the Student Union magazine, getting free records and free stuff, and for a magazine in the city. And via that, I also got a job as a record scout, A&R, for U2's record label for a while.
So what kind of music do you like? Sorry.
What kind of music? That's a funny one. Lots of different stuff.
Tell them about your love of Britney Spears.
Britney Spears. Look, Toxic is still one of the best songs ever written. You can't get me on that.
Yeah,
Did she actually write it,
has
though?
a negative meaning now.
Of course you didn't write it, no.
It's not good to be toxic anymore.
Chapel Rowan, favorite latest. Chapel Rowan, Lizzie McAlpine, Sleep Token. Don't know if anybody knows the semi-metal band.
Are these like UK bands or?
Sleep Token, a UK band. Chapel Rowan's the latest Sapphic icon coming out of, I think she's from Illinois, from the Bible Belt. And she sort of like does the female drag queen act, as it were. But fantastic live performance.
This is what you need to know about Tim, is that he is the ultimate Renaissance man. Like, he knows how to code in Python. He created the logo for Python. So the logo they still use today, that's his graphic design.
Interesting.
He has the most fascinating history.
But the magazine came back, so I think that's where you're going. Is I was working for a software consultancy because I broke my back, had an accident. I was working on the internet while I was doing my PhD, and I thought this internet thing might go somewhere. So I taught myself how to do websites in 1997-ish. And that was quite handy for a while. Started my own business and realized that most businesses are just selling. It's got nothing to do with what you actually do. Same with photography at the end of the day. And I hated the whole working from month to month, trying to get some money in. And my doctor had said to me, you've got to go out and walk. If you want your back to get better, because I've got 3 vertebrae fused together, he said, you've got to get out and walk. And I thought, well, I'm not going to do that. I've got the attention span of a gnat. So I picked up a camera. And the first day I went out, there was an amazing sunset. And it was like, ooh, that's quite fun. Don't like the getting up early bit, but it's quite fun. And so when it came around to thinking, what can I do instead of this stupid selling websites to people, is I said, needs to be a residual income. And I just recently read an article on about 1,000 true fans. And I can't remember who wrote 1,000 true fans. It was a while ago. But I thought, if I get a magazine going, I can do the graphic design, I can write, I can do the website, I can do bits of photography. I learned a fair bit off Joe Cornish and David Ward, so I could chat to those. And that's basically where it started from. It's a way of getting residual income and 1,000 true fans, and thinking, this is something I love. And if I can make it work without killing another passion, that'd be great. Didn't quite work.
You started that, and then your partner Charlotte. Are you guys married or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we moved. It got going for about 3 years, and at some point we said we were living in Hull, which is probably the flattest place in the whole of the UK, and it's got the Yorkshire Moors nearby, which is quite nice. But we used to go in Scotland on holidays every year, and I'd always feel better coming back. Every time, it always felt like leaving home rather than going home. And so we said to ourselves, well, let's just move up there. The magazine's working okay. I do drum scanning as another business. And Charlotte was doing some internet marketing. And we realized we could probably just about make it work. So we just dropped everything and bought a little cottage at the back of a village in the Highlands, which is the best move ever.
Yeah, it seems like Charlotte does even more than you do. That's like who I talk to for all my articles and everything. I hardly ever talk to you.
I'm the neurodivergent, useless git who just has ideas and dives down rabbit holes occasionally and comes up with something. Here's a business idea. We could do this.
Yeah.
Why don't you doing your job? Because that's boring.
When did On Landscape start? Like when was your first issue?
11 years ago, I think now.
Oh, that's great.
So it's been, what issue are we on now? 310, issue 310, I think we're on now.
Mm-hmm.
Should be able to find out when the first issue was. It was first called Great British Landscapes, because I thought it was going to be more parochial, but I quickly realised there's a lot more scope to it. And also I got invited to Iceland, so I had to do something about it. I wasn't going to miss a trip to Iceland for the name of a magazine. So,
What is your readership very good? Is good in the United States or North America?
it's about, I would say, 50% Europe, maybe 60% Europe, 50%, 30% States, and then the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's great.
Be nice. It'd be good if we can get more American audience.
I think it's just awareness, right? If they're aware.
Yeah, you don't want them.
I think a lot of it is. We don't do any marketing. It just seems to tick along in the background.
Yeah.
I keep on coming up with these silly ideas.
Shit about everything.
Yeah. So the latest idea now, instead of writing magazine articles for the magazine, is making insect nets, midge nets with goggles built in, which is just one outdoor accessory of the year in all the outdoors magazines. So that's my next get rich quick scheme.
There you go.
Luckily, this year, at least where I've been back in the mosquitoes weren't bad at all. I was surprised because they can be horrible and
do you
not a problem at all.
Do you have the really small midges?
Not where I am, but we do have like no-see-ums.
I think those are the same. That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
I think they are midges, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's basically the same thing. Yeah.
And do they bite?
Sandflies.
Do they leave horrendous sort of like scarry marks when they bite you?
Yep.
Yeah, they leave like tons of little like red dots.
Yeah.
Bite the shit out of you.
And my wife's from, her family's got Orkney, the sort of Outer Hebrides, Scottish Islands blood in her, so she gets bit by them and it just disappears the next day. I'm scratching 3 weeks later and blood's still coming out everywhere. And
So how often do you guys like reach out to people to ask them to contribute to the magazine versus like people reaching out to you? Like if somebody is watching this and they're like, oh, that'd be cool to write an article for them, how would you recommend they go about it?
Just drop us an email with an idea. If and it's great if you can point to a bit of writing you've done before, or just send us a, sort of like an introduction or a half finished something or other. Just gives you an idea of what's going on. And it's very much we very rarely refuse things. We prefer to receive something and go, that's not quite working. So we'll work with people to give them ideas, tweak it, and maybe say develop this or do that. So work as a proper editor rather than just a publisher.
Cool.
And we probably commission 1 or 2 articles per issue, maybe 3 if you count things like the feature photographer is done. And Matt's another paid for one, and then we get an editorial based article probably paid for, and then the rest are contributed or a bit of a less fee paid for, that sort of thing. And then people want books promoted, so instead of just saying put an advert out, say just write us a bit about a part of the book or making it or something that happened when you were on a photo shoot or something. Instead of just having an advert, make it an article.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything like in terms of topics that you're looking for in particular, or are you guys just kind of open to whatever?
It's typically less process driven, as in less about the technicalities of photography and more about the experiences. I like articles that look at how photography changes you, perhaps, or how you have developed fieldcraft in the process of doing some things. So it's things that are very much history of art. We like talking about some of. I mean, Guy Tal wrote a lot about the philosophy stuff that's just going to be in his new book. So I think he would develop some of the ideas as he was writing for us there. Looking forward to the book.
I think one of my favorite sections is the end frame, where somebody picks one of their favorite photographs and talks about why it's one of their favorite photographs, because I've always found that really interesting to see what other people appreciate about a photograph, where I usually would be like, I don't really like that photograph. And then someone talks about why they like it. And I'm like, okay, I get that now. That's cool. So I really love that part of the magazine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it forces people to spend a little bit of time writing as well, because it can get a little bit process driven. But if you start saying what inspires you, why are you drawn to this sort of work, that's really interesting. And I like some of the technical side of it, but it has to be technical side that's probably not covered elsewhere. So I geeked out about how tripods work, or why are lenses getting heavier, that sort of thing. Why do we need bloody 57 elements in a lens? Why can't you shoot at f/22? Which you obviously can, but is it that bad?
Yeah,
that sort of thing. And you come up with these little discoveries now and again. Like, I think I had Canon, Sony hired me for. I can probably talk about it now because ages when the A7R1 came out. Oh, it could have been the A7. Pretty sure it was A7R1. They wanted me to compare it with the Canon 5D Mark II and 5D Mark III. So I got to send a bunch of gear, multiple copies of lenses to test them against each other. And it's 5DS. That was one, the high resolution and the 5DSR. And as I was testing them,
such a shitty camera.
It was. It had resolution though.
Yeah, it's like 50 megapixels.
Yeah, like four stops at dynamic range.
And aliasing like a horrendous. I mean, I one of the things I said to Canon, because I had a meeting with Canon at some time later, I said, if you could take all the stuff out of that Magic Lantern plugin that can do automatic expose to the right, you'd gain about a stop and a half of dynamic range, useful dynamic range, just by exposing correctly. And they got all these ideas that they could have had for a firmware that would just make it a damn sight better camera that it can already do. What was the other one? So where did it go? Went off on a tangent. F22. A photograph taken at f22 on a 50 megapixel camera sharpened looks sharper than a photograph at f16 on a 5D3. So a good lens resolution can give you more depth of field, the equivalent of, which nobody thinks about that as an advantage, because everybody gets more resolution and thinks I need to open up to get more sharpness. So I geek out occasionally.
That's cool. So apart from on landscape, we all know you run the Natural Landscape Photography Awards with this other goofball here. But instead of going right into that, do you have any kids or anything, or
5 cats?
Okay,
that's
so
it.
You're a virgin.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely don't do that with cats. No, they're big, but that's wrong.
You said they're Maine Coon cats.
Maine Coons, yeah. Well, the biggest one we got is 4 foot long.
Wow.
Nose to tail. So. Did it go the wrong way then? Sorry.
No, you're good. Matt's just like dying over there. Well, I mean, what other hobbies do you have? You said like you do some coding. It sounds like you're kind of a jack of all trades.
Music was my biggest passion, which is
producing,
magazines.
Or playing an instrument.
playing originally, playing guitar. And then when I got working as a record scout I did that for about 2 years, but got completely burnt out. I was living in Manchester, and I was going to see probably 10 bands a day, every day of the week for 2 years. I worked out I'd had one night off 1 year from seeing bands, which is great. But, they're not the best bands in the world. And you get to the point where I want a night in. Please just let me have a night in.
You can listen.
But I've got my head back into music. So what happened is I just ended up playing bits of jazz and folk and fingerstyle and things like that, just to avoid the music I'd been listening to. Because I can understand why the music critics end up quite, that's the word for it, up their own arses about music, because they listen to so much of it, they want something different. They want something novel. They don't really care if it's not that entertaining.
Photographers are kind of the same way too, We're like, we get really jaded. And
I was gonna say, isn't that basically what we talk about when we do judging for NLPA?
Yeah. It's really difficult, and I think that's one of the things that I found when I was being a scout is trying to balance that passion for the joy of listening to Britney Spears' Toxic, or with knowing that you want something more complicated. It's like when you get why the Beatles so successful, because they play complicated music, and it was quite complicated music for the day structurally, but they also make it really accessible. But they also do really interesting instrumentation, and it's that bands normally go either in one direction where it's like up their own arses and get more and more inside themselves, or they go for the full popularity. And it's very rarely bands can walk that tightrope that balances the two. And it's that sort of success that's really interesting, and it's that sort of success I really like seeing in the competition.
Okay.
Finding images that are instantly enjoyable, but that develop and carry on engaging you as you look at them. So the music does that. I still play, and I've started enjoying music again. Like I say, it's a.
So Tim, do you? You're probably too young, but do you remember the band? I think it's from Scotland, called Big Country.
I do. In a Big Country.
I think it was in the 80s. I think they were. I
saw them supporting Queen.
Yeah, they're pretty. I do remember they were a pretty solid group.
Yeah,
they had bagpipes as well in their band.
They did indeed. Yeah. I went to a venue in down south in England that was it was supposedly 500,000 people. They keep on talking about it's one of the biggest gigs ever, and it was Queen supported by Big Country and Status Quo and a few other bands. Yeah,
and back in Canada there was somewhere around that same time there in St. John's, Newfoundland, there was a band called Rollins Cross, and they were heavy rock, but they just pounded the bagpipes with the heavy rock, and it was so unique. It was so different.
My wife is a big fan of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and always wanted to go see the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And
she must be from San Diego, California.
I think she'd like it if she got there. But she said, "Can we buy tickets for this Red Hot Chili Peppers gig?" And I said, "They're playing in Scotland." And I said, "Why are they playing in Scotland? They're playing in Dundee." And I said, "I was thinking there's no big venue in Dundee. What's going on?" So I picked up
like outdoor.
Is the Red Hot Chili Pipers. which could have been really entertaining.
A bit different.
I wonder if like a ton of people just bought tickets and then showed up like, what the fuck is this? Like
tiny little pub.
That's awesome.
When you do a Google search and you mistype it, you get all kinds of closeness.
I still want to see them now.
That's pretty funny.
Nice.
Cool.
What else should we talk about?
Film. How many people use film these days? Anybody else?
I don't think any of us do.
Stupid enough to.
I don't currently, but I did for 25 years.
And that's probably why you don't currently.
Well, I love what I'm doing. I love what I have now. I mean, I'm on with the picture, but I do lament the nostalgia, but I think I'm good with.
I don't think I could use film now if I had to pay for it.
I have this thinking that if you are going to use film, then you should use a chemical darkroom,
Yes.
I absolutely don't understand why they would shoot film and then scan it, because it's no longer that arena. So maybe I'm wrong, but I don't.
Well, I've got 3 Heidelberg drum scanners in the shed outside.
And you don't have to pay for film?
No, because there was a surgeon from Birmingham who sent me a message once saying, I'd like to sell some film. I'm stopping using my large format camera. And I said, how much do you have for sale? He said 5,000 sheets of 4.5.
Wow.
I was like, oh my God. And I'm thinking this is like £20,000 worth of film. And I started saying, well, I could
apocalypse.
I think, yeah. And he'd also...
right. 5,000 exposures is like one trip for me.
Well, I've taken... How many films?
It's like one fall season.
I think I was taking about 30 photographs a year on the websites I've taken.
Well, I can tell you have like 10 photos on your website.
Yeah. I haven't done anything with it, like you said, since 2012. But that's partly the reason, is because I've been building a darkroom in the shed outside, and I don't get the passion to use the camera unless I can process it all myself. I want to be in possession of it until
beginning to end, the whole process.
It does something. Yeah.
That's cool. I respect that, but I don't have time.
And part of the darkroom is also about, I want to convert film to digital. So use black and white, scan it, process it, convert it using one of John Cohn's black and white inkjet printers in shades of grey. Make a transparency and do contact printing, platinum, palladium, or anything. You can do fiber prints from it, because I love the appearance of tone black and white prints on fiber paper. It's just got a magical surface texture that I've not seen in many photographic papers. Canson Silver Rag, I think was the one I really liked, but rarely do I see many other.
Submit to the NLPA. Do they put whether it's digital or film, or is there not a? Can you tell if the photo is?
Yeah, because when it comes to the next round, when we do the raw checking, we have to get in touch and say, okay, now can you send us the raws? And if you've got a scan, can you upload a scan? But what we do is we just say put the piece of film on a light box and take a video of it, because you can't fake a video. And then if it does really well, we'll say, can we give a bit more evidence?
I was surprised at how many we had this year that were on.
That's what I was going to say, like how many people submit film photographs.
It's really popular for it. I mean, in the books, we probably get, I think in the last book, we maybe had 9 or 10, that sort of amount, I think, of film shots and a project. So, with that as well.
Does that influence your, I guess you don't know if it's film or not in the judging. Yeah, so it doesn't really influence how you feel about it.
I would hope that it doesn't. I would hope that it doesn't have anything to do with.
No, definitely not.
Sometimes
it's just pictures.
Sometimes in the projects, because people have a description. Sometimes in the description they'll like talk about how I capture all these on a pinhole camera.
Well, yeah, film photographers can't help but tell you they're shooting on film.
They're like vegans.
Yeah.
Well, it is like that. Yeah.
That's harsh, but true.
I think that
T-shirt for us.
Having worked in film for 25 years, there's a lot more latitude and control. When I'm speaking of color, there's a lot more control in digital. But the most important part of photography is your vision and how you compose, and everything else is irrelevant. You could use a disposable camera or whatever. It's how you see and compose it. That's the art of photography. It's not the product, not the machinery.
Yeah, cameras don't take pictures. People do.
That's one of the interesting things about many of the film shots is you take a photograph on film, and normally it's less likely that somebody will screw it up in post-processing. So quite often it has a I'll use the word transparency in the way it looks, because it hasn't been edited too much generally. I mean, people do take film and ruin it completely, but generally if you treat film carefully, it will come out with something that looks pretty luminous.
We were every year when we do NLPA, we kind of, once we get to the later stages, we kind of look through everything, and Tim and I will kind of send messages back and forth, and we look at some of the images that have made it to like the finals, and we're like, man, because we get the raw files and we start comparing the raw files with with what they submitted, and it's like, oh, they could have done it a little bit better, because a lot of times people push it way too far. It's just that, magenta color casts and all kinds of stuff gets introduced when you push stuff too far.
One of the really interesting things that came out of, because when I work for the Wildlife Photographer of the Year, my job is to do the raw checking and to try and make sure people haven't over-edited it, or to explain the edits to some of the judges. And quite often the raw file the actual submission may be a long way from the raw file, so it's difficult to compare. So I make very, very quick broad stroke adjustments, maybe throw a grad on to get it in the same ballpark as the submission. And I get a consistent reaction from the judges saying that looks better than the submission. And I think, does it look better because I've done hardly anything to it apart from very broad stroke adjustments? So I've not gone in there and tried to tweak things. I've just put a grad over it, touched a few sliders in Lightroom to get it close. Whereas the submission is they've done things with color, they've tried to burn things in a bit too fine, etc. And I think we see that as well when we're checking things, don't we? Quite often it doesn't take much to make the raw file look
well.
Good.
I don't think it comes down to like how much you do or don't do. It's just all about doing things that are absolutely necessary and nothing more. So like some images, there will be more things you need to do than others. And so once you just start throwing adjustments at it for the sake of like adding more or tweaking more things with no real intention behind it, that's where it like starts to fall off really quickly and just fall apart, and it look strange because you're doing things that aren't appropriate.
Yeah.
I would think that the photographers who are not calibrated and their monitors have the biggest disadvantage, I would assume, in sending you stuff, because that you talk about magenta casts, and it's surprising how many people don't calibrate their monitors. So they may think everything looks great and there's no cast, but if you're calibrated, I think those photographers have the biggest disadvantage of submitting work to be reviewed. So.
One of the things I've recommended to quite a few people in checking files is just look at it on an iPhone, because the iPhones, for all they are not good monitors, they are consistent in the way they look. They'll tend to magenta, true, but at least you'll have, it'll look the same on most people's iPhones. So therefore, if it looks okay on an iPhone compared with other pictures, you're probably in a good ballpark.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Whereas some people, it's very easy to cock up a monitor by calibrating it wrong.
True.
It's so true. Yeah. We were just talking about that on Discord a couple of days ago. Like, it's so easy to make your monitor worse through calibration, and that's why I always tell people, like, spend the money on a nice like BenQ monitor that's like 99% Adobe RGB calibrated already out of the box, or just use a MacBook Pro that's with the photography color profile. It's not perfect, but it's like 95% perfect.
I'm gonna say call me a heathen, but I would do a lot of scanning work, and I do a lot of the processing on a MacBook Pro, just using their print mode D50. Low brightness on the monitor, a dark room, and it's fantastic, really good.
Tim, that's something maybe we're talking about, is comparing files on your computer with how they're going to turn out for the NLPA books, especially considering that they're not your photographs, right?
Yeah, that's a challenge, because I'd like to be able to say I don't touch people's pictures when I print them in the book, but like a good audio mastering engineer, you need to try and balance things, because all the pictures are going to be different. They're all going to have different. The biggest issue with a lot of pictures is the black levels. Quite often, color casts, black levels, perhaps overall tonality. That's not too bad. Interestingly, because we asked for submissions in sRGB, I have very little problems with CMYK. I think there's maybe only 4 files out of the whole book where I've actually made changes to get a good CMYK conversion. And I think that's in moving towards FOGRA standard. Is it Grackle in America that's similar to FOGRA? I don't know. But the new standards for printing are a lot better than it used to be for CMYK. If you use CMYK in Photoshop and its default setting, it's bloody awful, and that gives people a really scary idea of what CMYK is about. Whereas if you use Grackle, use FOGRA, There's very little you need to do apart from get the black levels right.
My printer had me use Crackle for both of my books.
You don't need to do much, do you?
I only in my new book. I think with my first book, I didn't have to tweak anything. Maybe like 1 or 2 images. In my new book, I think there were like 3 or 4 images that went out of gamut once I converted them, and they were images with like really, really orange reflected light in the sandstone, and so I just had to like tweak saturation and cool. You know, like make localized adjustments where I just cooled down the oranges slightly so it wouldn't go out of gamut. But everything else was spot on once I converted.
I will say that the worst image out of 3 books I've worked on was one of yours, Eric, in terms of conversions.
Do you remember which one it was?
Yeah, it's I think it's the front cover of the book. The desert, the what do you call it? The oily surface. There's actually an iron surface with the leaf in it. Not sure what you call the oily.
Wait, why did you have to convert that one?
Because the bluey purple was the worst color for printing in CMYK. So
wait, but when did you print that image?
That was in the
volume 1.
Volume 1.
Yeah, volume 1 it was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That one with the 2 leaves and the,
yes,
like really purple polka dot oils. It's called Ritual.
It either needs a huge, in fact, you just have to desaturate it massively to try
those photos, the purple will just go gray. So you have to make the purple like more cyan or you just got to push it in either direction. You can't get that purple color. Yeah.
But the thing is, the really strange thing is when you see it in print, you don't think, well, that's not very saturated.
Right.
Whereas you compare it with an inkjet print or a monitor, and it's like, oh my God, it's lost all the color. What's going on? And the ability for your eye to compensate is incredible.
I had 2 oil images in my new book that I had to play with on the conversion because of that same thing. So yeah, similar color palette.
But it is those blues. It's those blues that aren't quite magenta and aren't quite cyan that sit on the boundary that are just...
I just made them more cyan, even though like that's not my preference. But when you're printing, you know, you have limitations. So they look better than gray.
At least you get a bit of boost to the color, yeah. Right. But yeah, the one thing I still haven't perfected in terms of that printing is managing to get a good gradation in the bases of the blacks. The first book we got printed was awful. The blacks had blocked up quite a lot. The second book we had an issue that the printing rip thought we were sending it Adobe RGB. Was it the way around? No. It basically made everything. It applied an Adobe RGB profile, and we didn't know it was doing it.
Confusion.
It's a big problem.
Yeah, but it wasn't. It was not in any of the settings. It was actually something that was sitting in the middle of the ag for rip. That we had ag for engineers come out to try and find out what it was, and so on press, I was adjusting every single image before it went to press to make it work, which was stressful, to say the least.
Tedious.
Printing is such a nightmare. Printing books.
This last book I did was pleasurable in comparison. Apart from the fact I was writing the content while they were making the plates.
So did you use 3 different printers for these 3 books?
No, we've used the same printer for the last 2.
Okay, cool.
Which is really good because they got rid of the ag for engineers after the book we did. Me and Alex were both. Alex gets his book done there as well. And we both went in there and said, right, we're going to try and help work with the printer to get it sorted out. He brought in new color engineers, and we did a load of test prints and everything. And we're getting stuff off there now that is bang on. Yeah, apart from the limitations in blues and stuff like that.
Right.
And then the next thing is trying to work out how do we get these perfect open blacks. You know, when you get the really dark, I've got a really dark picture in the examples from Dorin Bofan. And they look great on a monitor because you've got this luminosity behind them and they're almost black. They just got things, but you try and print that and it's a nightmare because you just get a slight bit off and it's either blocked up or it loses its life. Mm-hmm. So I'm still working on that one. I need to do a bunch of wet proofs to test it out.
So
but yeah, it's fun.
What country is the printer in?
It's in the UK.
Great.
I decided it was better to be on press and work with somebody who I can develop a relationship with and be there than send it abroad. We were thinking about Italy, but
and not have to wait 3 months to get this back and forth.
Yeah,
right.
The time thing has been a big issue. I mean, the first book only arrived about 2 months before the second book, didn't it? It was that close. And then the third book, because we've changed the start of the competition date, it only just arrived as competition dates were closing. But this book, the competition finals get judged on the 12th. Is that right, Matt?
Yes.
Yeah. And so the 12th of September, and the book I'm going to press on the first week in November, just to make it difficult for myself.
Yeah, that'll be a quick turnaround for you guys.
So you got 5 weeks to write all the content, get all the submissions in, lay out the book, do proofs.
So if anybody wins an award, turn your shit into Tim as fast as you can, because
we have a plan this year. If they don't get the content, they're out of the book.
Okay.
That would work.
That's fair.
Even if you win, doesn't matter.
That's great incentive. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which also means maybe you don't get a copy of the book.
Damn.
So, and that's the extended PDF as well, because I think the extended PDF we do, I think is really fun. I'm not sure how many people read it, but I think a lot of people do. Has anybody here had a look at the book in the extended PDF?
For year 3, I went through it. I skimmed through it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's nice to be able to pick a picture and get a story behind, a longer story. It'd be great to include that in the printed book. It would just cost a fortune. I mean, the books would be 400 pages long.
Yeah.
That's a great idea that you're doing there.
Matt said we need to make more of a thing of it, stick it in the front of the book.
So I cracked another beer. This is a hazy double IPA from Other Half in New York.
Nice.
Been a long time since I've drank Other Half beer on here. They used to be one of my favorites, so it's kind of nostalgic. This is their classic all Citra everything, but this is all fresh Citra everything, so it has a twist. So it has Citra hops, then also a variety or a varietal of Citra, which is the Yakima Chief hop 301. And it says it's a cryogenically frozen and pelletized fresh hop. So, they're just taking like the juiciest part of the Citra hop and putting a concentrated blast in there, and it's actually really nice.
Jimmy, did you open one?
Very yellow.
I did, yeah. I
was going to say, that looks like you peed that.
It looks like a wheat beer.
It's not going to change much going through his body.
Yeah, like a Hefeweizen or something.
No, I like that one. It had kind of that cool, fresh notes to it that it wasn't a punch in the face, but it was
going to get another one.
Different.
Yeah, I think the best one of this series was the triple dry hop all Citra everything. That one was amazing. It tasted
really good.
So like it's triple dry hop now, but honestly, it tasted like how the normal all Citra everything used to taste when you would get it.
Yeah, the brewery did a Citra week, and so we were able to grab a box of those. I think it was like 5 total that were in there.
I think it was 6 different ones, yeah. Because one was like a Pilsner or something. It wasn't an IPA.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
it was like a Citra lager.
Mm-hmm.
Aren't double IPAs generally that sort of cloudy color?
Just the New England style. So if you get like a West Coast, it'll still be completely clear, even if it's like a triple IPA. It all depends on, how they brew it. So if they're dry hopping it, it'll be cloudier. Yeah.
I have a rookie question. When beer like that is shipped, obviously it gets jiggled and knocked around.
And
is there any issues with opening it and having it like explode, or is that not something that would happen with beer?
Oh, it happens for sure. My rule is I never drink anything the day it arrives. I always let it sit at least 24 hours in the fridge just to cool off
if it
again.
Settles, right. I just think of high school when some jerk would shake the can and then you would open it and explode.
So there's like smoothie sours that have a ridiculous amount of fruit in them, and if they get too warm, they can re-ferment because of all the fruit and
create pressure. Yeah,
I had a package where like 3 cans completely exploded because it was just like a super hot week, and it took a long time to get here, and so when it came, it was just like a sloppy, wet mess. Yeah,
it's not my fault.
Pretty hard on computers.
Thanks to Jimmy for sending these out to me. I appreciate it, buddy.
That's my next one.
Joker.
Very hoppy.
Joker.
So that's probably West Coast style or like a traditional IPA. So it's like clearer.
Yeah.
Yeah, more crispy, a lot drier.
So
which
Mike,
brewery is that, Tim?
This is the same brewery again. So it's
nice.
They do
Williams
a whole
Brothers?
set of them. Yeah.
Gotcha. And what you got, Jimmy?
So this is a new one to me. It's called Double Pillow IPA. Wow, it's not really coming up on there.
Yeah,
That's doing some
camera's doing
strange
something weird
things.
to it.
Yeah.
Is it like holographic or
Overexposed.
something?
No, it's actually just like
Oh, it's a stencil. Yeah.
green and white. Yeah.
It looks like 2 stops overexposed.
Yeah. It's like blowing out.
Actually, when you tilt it back, you could kind of see it. But anyway,
Yeah.
There
you go.
All right.
What's on it? Is that bread?
It's actually brewed with wheat, which is kind of cool too.
Yeah, I was thinking that looked like bread.
And citra hops. It's out of Hudson Valley Brewery from Beacon, New York. And it's a double IPA. I think it's coming in at 9%.
What is a double IPA?
So
Give it a shot.
it all has to do with the ABV. So like a session IPA would be like anywhere between like 3 and 5%, really low ABV. Then a normal IPA would be between like 5 and 7%. Double IPA is like 8 and 9. Triple IPA 10 to 11. Quadruple IPA, so on and so forth. So
Yeah. These are all 5%. I've got.
But-
so just
since the alcohol level goes up, they have to add more ingredients, like more hops and things to mask that flavor. So
Yeah.
we like them because they're a lot more flavorful for the
Yeah,
most part,
yeah.
because they got to hide the alcohol with more hops and everything. So that's like the gimmick behind them. Obviously,
As
some of
Jim-
them are horrible and they don't put enough hops and it just tastes really boozy. But the stuff that we
As
get
Jimmy
is
would,
really nice.
Jimmy would say, it knocks them on his ass the next day after. Remember the one I was on, and you told me that you paid for it the next day? I don't know. You were drinking.
Oh
really
yeah,
high.
no, it was bad.
It was like a 12% or something. Yeah.
It was a poor decision late in the session, I believe. What it was. So,
late
Was
night.
that was that the name? Was that the name of the beer? Poor decision.
yeah, that would be
Yeah,
that would be another good name.
bad life choice.
So, Tim, I've been excited to have you on the show because since you run on Landscape and the Natural Landscape Photography Awards and everything, I knew you would know of like a lot of great photographers, probably many of which we haven't ever heard of or featured on the show before. So I knew you'd have a good selection, and you did send in some pretty good stuff. Obviously, we all know Joe Cornish here, and he's a buddy of yours, so I'm not surprised you included him.
I picked Joe and David because they were initially my inspiration. I was my parents and family bought me a workshop before I started in photography, and with out in the Outer Hebrides, living in a Viking longhouse for a week with David Ward, and I didn't realize everybody in this holiday was going to be using large format cameras. And so he was very inspirational. As soon as I started seeing the results from David Ward's pictures, I was stunned. And I'd loved Joe Cornish's work. So I got to meet Joe Cornish on a workshop later on with David. And so both of those between them have been probably my biggest inspirations in terms of thinking about photography, but also in the ideas around composition and structure. And I think this picture by Joe is just a fantastic example of taking a ridiculously complicated subject and making a cohesive composition from it, and using the subtleties and the complexity in a way that creates a cohesive whole, especially the way it transitions from this very close foreground using the tilt shift capability of the 5.4 camera, and letting it feed into this wonderful background, looking almost like, the reason I like this so much, it almost looks like a cracked frame on a picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the glass broke on top of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And I like that fracturing effect in it. And Joe's attention to light is something that I find amazing. He's worked as a car photographer, and interestingly, so did David Ward. And so, car photography, lighting is everything. Lighting is the end all and be all and end all of it all. It's how you give shape to a car. It's how you create 3 dimensions. So that
nature photography as well. But yeah, you're talking about like artificial lighting.
Yes, exactly. So you learn how artificial lighting works. Then when you go out in the field, you think about everything as either reflectors or light sources.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start thinking of clouds as reflectors and light moderators and conditions, it changes the ideas about what the environment and what the atmosphere is going to do to light.
So is this from the Scottish Highlands?
Yes. Yeah. So this is I think this is on Rannoch Moor, so it's not far from where I live. We live just as the mountains get properly mountainous, and about 20 minutes from where I live, there's an area that's 1,000 foot above sea level, and it's like a marsh. It's a flat bog that's 1,000 foot above sea level, and then the mountains rise from that. And there's these lock-ins that you get a cold sink, and basically the cold air just settles in these areas and creates a place that can go. We could be 2 degrees or 1 degree at the house here, and it could be minus 20.
Little pockets.
20 minutes away. Yeah.
Crazy.
So I don't have any photos in my portfolio, but the first solo backpacking trip I ever did was the West Highland Way in Scotland.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. So you'd have walked past this. In the background, can you see the trees in the background? I think that's the West Highland Way. So you'd have walked on the other side of this loch.
Definitely looks familiar, yeah. But I was wearing like Vans, skateboarding shoes, jeans, a cotton sweatshirt, borrowing a sleeping bag from... No, I just had like a shitty 40-degree sleeping bag. Long story short, I froze my ass off and I got hypothermia for the first time in my life on this trip because I just got like soaking wet because it was like raining. Yeah. And then I couldn't make a fire because all the wood was just like completely saturated. So I just got in my tent, just got in my sleeping bag, and I like was so freezing cold I couldn't warm up, and I just blacked out. Like I just passed out, and I thought I was gonna die because I was just impressive. Like so freezing cold. And luckily I woke up the next morning, but I was completely soaking wet that entire trip. Obviously because I had crappy gear, but
was that near the King's house towards the end of it?
No, this was actually my first or second night that happened. It was by Ben Nevis, I think that mountain is called.
Yeah, well, Ben Nevis is the end of it, so if it's
I think I did it backwards then.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. You'd have had fun there. I went past Ben Nevis really today, pretty. And it was 24 degrees on Ben Nevis. Although it was 24 degrees on Ben Nevis, but last week it had snow on the top.
Yeah, so I did it in October, and I had no idea I was doing it when I was like going to Scotland. I just got there and I was like, hey, what kind of stuff can I do? And they're like, oh, there's this really cool like trail you should do. It's like, okay, I'll just backpack it. And
fantastic. Oh, you got a good experience then.
It was incredible. I look back on it fondly now, but that was an amazing trip I did out there.
Type 2
Come
fun.
over again. Yeah, definitely.
One of the things that I love about Joe Cornish's compositions is that they're very complicated, and they have things in them that most people would avoid. Like he's got that piece of ice touching the left edge of the frame, which most people would say you should never do that, but Joe does it and he gets away with it. And it's because he has all of these really interesting things that are like stepping stones throughout the composition that help you kind of just work your way through the scene. And he's one of the few photographers that I've ever looked at work from that can just pull that off almost every single photograph.
His pictures work as a cohesive whole without things don't look composed. And that's what I often like about a lot of photographers. I want pictures to look amazing without looking composed.
Yeah, that's a good point. You want to feel the composition, but not notice it.
Yeah. And I think that's what that works here. You know, you can see the elements that he's composed. That diagonal line, like lightning, that goes across the picture. The two, there's one that's a thin line, and the foreground line that zigzags. You know, the placement of that. Everything he does is intentional. So it may look like it's random, but he's spending a long time moving the frame around, trying to position things, put coincidences together. He does a lot of forest photography. You know, that sort of thing's the make or break. So the little transitions between branches and the way they occlude the parallax against the backgrounds and things.
Yeah, he's got awesome stuff. I don't think he's been featured on the show before, though. Maybe one time.
He doesn't like social media, does he?
No.
Yeah, he doesn't really post anything. Yeah, I think
you have to embarrass him into things. I forced him to get a website. So there is a website out there, joecornishphotographer.com, if you want to see some examples.
You'll have to force him to come on the show as a guest sometime.
I'll have a chat with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that attention to light is just always impressive with him, too. It's just, you know, on top of the composition just being amazing, the light just really accents it as well.
The Scotland's Mountains book, if you get a chance, he's done the 3 books that are really worth getting for Joe is First Light, which is fantastic. all this 5/4 works. Scotland's Mountains, which is a project obviously just with mountains, but I think in many ways, I think that's his best book. And he's done one called Scotland's Coast, which is just all, as it says, the wandering around the edge with the sea and the mountains where they meet. So it's a good triumvirate of books to play with. When I started off photography, one of the things I did is I wanted to try and figure out what was going on with pictures. So I got some tracing paper and I looked at pictures and I tracked where my eyes went, because I was working in the web at the time on usability analysis, eye tracking software, and I couldn't actually borrow any for work, but I wanted to use it on pictures. So I just did it by looking at a picture and saying, okay, where's my eye going? And I'd put things on the tracing paper, say, these are the islands on the picture where my eye's going, and this is the rough flow. And then
that would reveal like the structure of the scene.
Yeah, and then I'd draw the rough outline of the main contrasting edges in the scene and seeing how those played with each other. And I started seeing a huge amount of commonalities between how things worked and how things flowed, how the stress points in the picture worked. It's a great exercise to be analytical without seeing all the detail in a picture. I'm sure people have done it. It's not a common thing.
Yeah, he's got great stuff. If anybody hasn't heard of him before, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Absolutely. Just quit.
I love Dorin's work, so
sick.
It's cool that you featured another image of his. I featured one of his images before, but
yeah,
his book is really awesome too.
Yeah, he's a person working his own line. He's not interested in trying to become popular for any reason. He's got his passion for where he lives and the area he loves, and just works it. And I think
Transylvania.
Okay.
Yeah, Transylvania.
Yeah. And he just goes out. He's got no intention to do with things. He may notice things and go back occasionally, but a lot of it is just see what happens. And I love that idea in photography of just keep on going out, and it's something I try and do here. I need to spend more time to do it. Like I've ended up getting a bit distracted by climbing and mountaineering since I've been living in the mountains here.
Yeah, you've gotten back into rock climbing, you were saying in an email a while ago.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So the whole idea of that was to become more familiar with the mountains and be more comfortable in them. So I need to take that now and go out and actually do photography with it, camping and things. But he's doing that on a regular basis. And this picture just works so well that crystals, the atmospheric effect you're getting from this.
Well, it looks like here he photographed Jesus Christ coming down, like the second coming.
It's like the second coming right here.
I didn't know that happened.
Yeah. You were waiting for
ourselves. Yeah. But atmospheric effects like the sun pillar here, and this is one of the pictures that I had real problems printing in the book because so much of it is close to black. I mean, it might be looking a bit blue on the monitor, but this is shading down to complete black, and trying to get that balance and making it really dense, and it needs to be dense to make the light work. Those sorts of pictures are the ones that challenge me when I'm trying to print.
So I always compensate, expecting images to print a bit darker than on my screen, just inevitably. So I always brighten them. I had a really, really dark image in my new book. It's called Lurking in the Shadows, something like that. It's a 2-page spread of like these oak trees against a canyon wall and like an illuminated rabbit brush. And for that one, I knew like those shadows were going to come out super, super dark once it printed. So I actually like over brightened that one quite a bit, like twice as much as I normally would. And then once it printed, like it fell into that right spot. So that's kind of how I've treated these scenes, like just like really open up those shadows, knowing they're going to drop like a stop or two. And then, they tend to fall in the right place.
One of the things I'd always advise people to do is never have a 000 black in the picture. Is lift your black to about 5 points in Photoshop, because the worst thing is clipping black, so you don't want to lose that, and it's better to have a lifted black.
I'd rather have detail and not have it as dark as I want than just have it go muddy.
One of the interesting things we had, and I do this regularly on all the pictures now, we've got it calibrated. The press works brilliantly, and if I get wet proofs done, and if anybody know, a wet proof is where you actually create a plate properly as if you're printing the book and it goes through the full press, so it's exactly like making a book page. If you put that under a brilliant light, like a proper, viewing light, it looks perfect. Nobody reads a book like that.
Right.
Everybody reads a book at home, with a dining room light on or sitting at the table.
Super warm, yellow.
Yeah.
Fucking...
But the main thing is they don't have enough light to lift the blacks out, so things will look just too blocked up.
Yeah.
So I always just put a slight lift in the shadows. Maybe
you got to take into account the
recovery.
viewing environment, the likely viewing environment, and overcompensate a little bit.
There's no point being clinical about it and saying you must view this under a D50 100 CDM booth.
It's crazy how different a book will look. Like I've looked at my book outside in full sunlight, in the shade, inside in different rooms. I'm like, holy shit. Yeah. Like the temperature, the contrast changes so much. And it's not like any of those settings look bad. They're just different.
When we got off second book through, I was sitting in the dining room with the book just arrived, and I opened it up and I thought, oh my God, it's screwed. Everything looks too magenta.
Yeah.
I got cheap LED lights in the dining room, little down lights. And one of the colors that really goes wrong in a lot of books is the sort of the magenta dye. It's really reactive to fluorescent lights and LED lights, and it will look more magenta. It really brings it out. So if you ever want to assess a book, or if you ever want to look at a book and get it in the best light, sit in a room on an overcast day and look at it, or with north light. So you haven't got direct light, but it's like a diffuse light. But daylight is important. LED lights and fluorescent lights are bloody awful, and I've seen that repeatedly.
Yeah, I like to look at mine in some kind of natural light. So either during the day in my living room with ambient soft light come through the windows,
Yeah, exactly.
Or I did outside in the shade. Or
I did a scanning project for a guy called Tim Rudman, who's he does this lith printing, which is when you make separations and you put different toning onto prints. And all his pictures, he's got a viewing booth at home. He puts things in museums. All his pictures have this pink line in the transitions between the thiosulfate toning. He'd have this amazing little pink line that would appear. And he would, print his pictures to try and bring this out. And he sent me these to scan, and I scanned them on a big, 250 kilogram flatbed scanner. And when they came out, I didn't know about what they looked like because I never looked at it. As I look at the pictures in daylight, I get the scans. And when I got the scans through, this pink line there, I'm thinking I've done something wrong. So I take the prints out in daylight, and there's no pink line at all. So I go back in and get rid of it, and I send him the scans, and he said, "What have you done? This pink line's not there. It's like my character." And I'm like, "But it's not in. It's not in the picture." And it turns out he'd rarely seen his pictures in daylight. He'd always worked under viewing booths,
artificial lighting,
fluorescent, or good LED lighting. And even museums rarely use good daylight effect lighting. They use LEDs or some form of fluorescent, sometimes HIDs, but they aren't perfect.
I mean, when you're photographing scenes in natural light, like for nature photography, it just makes sense to look at the prints in natural light too. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
It's going to come through.
And so it's interesting. I don't trust viewing booths anymore. Everything's done. I do some art repro, painting repro, and I'll always wait for an overcast day and stick something on an easel in the yard and photograph it. And it makes a huge difference.
Just because
I think Tim needs to drink like 3 more beers. He's way too articulate still, and I feel like he's up here and I'm like down here in the caveman level.
That's pretty normal experience for me as well.
Yeah, this image is awesome though. I love Dorin's work.
Amazing.
Check the book out, definitely.
Yeah. What's it called again? I have it over here, but
I can't remember what it's called.
I could go dig it up real quick, but it's not. It's Terra Silva.
That's it.
Yeah.
Terra Silva, meaning land of the forest.
This one I remember from the Natural Landscape Awards, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, really cool. It feels so organic, like human flesh, or like it looks like prosciutto, and
it's very difficult to work out because it looks almost like flowers. Who's the Ansel Adams, the female painter that worked with Ansel Adams?
George O'Keefe.
George O'Keefe. Yeah. So it's got a bit of that sort of feel to it. And it almost looks like rose petals, but then again, you say it looks like meat. And it's got this.
Eric.
That's just Eric.
Eric's hungry.
That's because Eric only eats one time a day.
Bacon. Is it bacon? And then you've got this almost like rose thorns. So it looks like thorns. So it's like you've got this.
It's like dried up seaweed, though.
Yeah, it's just dried up kelp.
Yeah.
And underneath it's just another form of seaweed with a piece of rock. And it works so well. And I like square compositions. I must admit, if I was going back in time, I wasn't working with a 5.4, I'd have a Hasselblad.
Did this one win an award?
Did it win an award? It got Judge's choice for Joe Cornish chose it as his favorite picture. In the book.
He judged the first year, right?
Yeah, that's right. He said he'll never judge a competition again. He says.
Yeah, he was pissed off about the results. You know, the person that won.
It was
award.
I think everyone was.
Yeah, we had 8 people on the panel, and we had 4 people from America and 4 people from Europe, and we had some fiery characters, didn't we, Matt? Sandra Bartoka.
Year 2 was not the best. Let's just say that.
Oh, year 2.
We went down to 5 judges from now on, so we can't get a deadlock. And yeah, it was fun, but it was painful.
I was going to say, this image is really, really striking. Immediately, my first response was it looks like some sort of like eye, like from a lizard or some kind of alien, like. And then I was thinking prosciutto, like Eric, but really just a remarkable find. I mean, that's just
also like flowery or like some kind of like linen.
Yeah,
it's got a feminine blood. It's got a sort of feminine feel to it, which is why I was thinking George O'Keefe.
Very flowy.
The rose and thorns sort of effect.
There's this tree. There's a tree structure in that beautiful black lines, like this beautiful branching. The
one thing that grabs me every time is that single, almost thorn-like point in the middle of the picture. It's like a real focal point. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the contrast, I think, in textures is really really well done, and I think that's, for me anyway, that's what makes this image so remarkable. These kind of soft flowing surrounding, and then the kind of harsh, and that is, Tim, I agree, that spike, that one thorn looking thing that popped off the side, it just kind of gives it that edgy feel, but it's surrounded by the soft, I thought right away flowers, so like petals is what I'm going to say, but it's a great contrast in texture. It really makes the image work.
Is Harvey Thomas on Instagram or anything? Do you guys follow them?
Harvey Lloyd Thomas has a website.
Okay.
Casgwent. I think it's called Casgwent. Let me just see if I can find.
There's an Instagram account, but it doesn't look like.
I couldn't find one, but I remember this image. Like, it's seared into my memory, but I never went and looked at more of the photographer's work.
If you go to casgwent.com, CASGWENT.com, he's got a website that looks like it's from 1999. But he does photography as a more of a stream of consciousness thing. So he travels and takes pictures. And he always goes back to the same places. He goes to a little place just north of us in Scotland, and just goes back again. Again, he's interested in the wildlife and the nature, and then he's got this great observational eye that works. He's got no interest in photography for selling or promotion or printing. That's the one, Matt. Yeah. And I like that. I like that idea of photography as diary, as just journaling.
Yeah, and we'll get to that. But you did something for a little while. You sent us a link. It was like a photo for every day. When did you do that, and how long did you do it for?
Yeah, I did that when we moved up here. I did it for just over a year, I think, and I think I took a little break and then started again. Okay. Why did I stop? I'm really annoyed that I stopped. I got too busy. And I can't remember why it got busy. I think I started running the competition. That might have been one of the reasons. But also, I've had a period when I got up here of taking for granted living in a beautiful location. And also, I'm climbing and mountaineering, going walking and things. And I ended up living in the landscape rather than just photographing it. And I should be doing both. And I find it difficult to combine the two together. And since in the last, I've been taking a few photographs over the last year, maybe 9 months, because one of the local bookshops has said we don't have any books that just represent the area. And I just thought it'd be nice to get a book that's just stuff from within maybe 20 minutes from where I live in this area. That talks about the people who climb here, the mountain rescue team that climbs here, the fishing and the local
Eric,
about something.
Eric, is this the part of the show where I'm supposed to make fun of Tim for not?
I mean, I was going to bring it up, but yeah, you were
not being a photographer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
where's
the photographs from Tim Parkin, the publisher of On Landscape?
He quit in 2012, apparently.
That's
his latest gallery on his website.
I post every photograph I take on the editorial, which is like one every 2 weeks at most. I'm saving them all up for the book.
That's
okay.
That's so hard to do, though, man.
Saving images? Why do you think it's hard, Matt? I mean, it is hard, but what about it is hard for you? Just get those likes as fast as you can.
No, it's so funny because like I'm a year out from doing the Colorado Trail, and just this week I started editing the bulk of my photos from the trip. And I'm like, why did I wait so long to do this? Because there's some really interesting stuff in here, and I could have gotten such a head start on, trying to do something with the work. I don't know, maybe it's the way my brain works, but like when I have work sitting around, like I want to do something with it. Yeah,
I agree.
It is, once you put something out there, it is kind of liberating. Like you kind of feel freed up to work on new stuff, and you're not like constipated. So like making my new book, like it's like all brand new images except for like 20 that were they just needed to be in there because they're really appropriate. I never photographed like a better version of those kinds of scenes. That wasn't difficult because it just made me really excited to put it out, like because it would just be like more impressive, and like people would just have like no idea what's in there. There'd be more anticipation and things like that. Actually made me more excited about it. But since it took so fucking long to print, the problem was like it was supposed to come out last summer. And since I turned it into the printer, I made like so many new galleries of the same location because I just kept photographing the same places. But I didn't feel like I could put those out until this work came out that precedes those. So like I was like just really held up, and I was getting really frustrated because of that.
That's what I'm talking about, Eric, is like it feels like I don't know how to.
I just felt stuck, yeah.
Yeah,
because I was like, how can I show people my newest stuff if they're gonna miss the stuff that I did? It'd be like this big jump, from my old stuff to my new stuff without this like 6 years of work that I'd done in between.
Yeah, and
you can just put them on your MySpace account.
It has a psychological effect, though. At least for me, it does. Like,
I felt
sitting on a hard drive like that bothers me a lot.
It does feel good when you put a gallery out, but I have no trouble sitting on stuff. But it's like I wasn't sitting on it at that point. I turned it in, and now it was just like needlessly taking forever, and so that did get really frustrating because I just couldn't release like other stuff. So I feel like really backed up right now.
Do you think you need to get some of the photographs out because you're changing as a photographer, just because people change?
Yeah.
And so it's what you were, not what you are.
Exactly. And so I was really excited to put the book out because like when I turned it into the printer, it was still pretty fresh work. So I was excited to like release brand new stuff that was like caught up with who I was. But then like it took forever, and I kept evolving during that time. And so now I'm like, shit, like this book is no longer who I am right now. It started to feel dated because I'm like, I got way better stuff that I photographed a couple weeks ago or a few months ago. Like, I would have like redone the book, if I could have, but obviously I was stuck with those images that I submitted. But
Eric, that's in your head though, because the viewer isn't
right. They have no context.
Yeah, exactly.
They just want to see really good images, and I know it's personal for you, but it's for the viewer. It's new to them for the most part.
Right. Yeah, I think our timelines mess with our heads a lot. Like I'll look at old work of mine and be like, oh, that's not me. That's not terrible. I just don't see myself in it. And other people will look at it and like it, and I'm like, how can you like that? That's like terrible. And it's really just our own like internally created. Like Richard said, it's all in your head, and it. But it
that
is.
probably
It's-
about sharing excitement as well. About you've got this excitement of what you've done, about how you processed it, about how you've got a few pictures in maybe a body of work, and you want to share that excitement, and that does die out over time. And
It feels stale
Sure
for
does.
you, yeah.
Well, the further away I am from actually of having made the photo, like being in the scene, the less likely I am to work on it. Like I can't sit on photos for very long. Like I've been dragging out this Utah series for 6 months now. We were out there when Eric March.
My God, you've been posting like a photo every day, and
I'm just
still have
about
more,
done,
apparently.
but like I do have quite a bit
Thank
more.
God.
Yeah. Well, it was a
like
pretty
your
good
new-
trip, I gotta say.
I like your
cleaned
new
up.
photo. I like
They've
your new
been
work,
amazing.
Mike. Keep
Thanks,
posting
dude.
it.
Appreciate it.
I'll wait till you
Yeah.
see my shit from that trip, Matt.
Nobody likes your stuff, Eric. Just be quiet.
Yeah, exactly. I took Eric around, showed him where to go.
Held my hips, pointed me in the
Yeah.
right direction,
Exactly.
whispered in my ear.
Took his lens cap off for him.
There's a saying that,
double
there's a
entendre.
saying a saying that it's none of our business what people think of us, and I think that we really can't control what people think of our work. But I just wonder if people can differentiate between a certain time span of your work that you produce. I know we're close to our work and we know all that, but I wonder if the viewer can separate all this other stuff, right? I
That's
don't
a
know.
good question, Richard.
Yeah.
My thing is I don't necessarily care about the viewer, honestly.
Right.
It's more
That's fucked
about
up.
how I feel about the work. Like
Yeah.
and like if I go back and edit something from 2 years ago, I'm just not as excited about it as I
Yeah.
am stuff that I did 2 weeks ago, you know? So
Yeah.
I've never shared
Exactly.
anything that I don't like because I think other people might like it, but I do share things. Like the reason you share things is to impact people in some way. Otherwise, like, what's the point of sharing it? So I do care about how I'm going to like change someone's mind or like what I'm going to teach them through my photograph. Or I do definitely have like an intention through my photography in that sense.
Yeah, I don't think we can evaluate our work by likes because that's totally,
There's so many things out of your control that have nothing to do with the quality of the image.
I mean, someone can post a picture of a chipmunk and get 3,000 likes. It doesn't really mean anything.
I've got
Yeah, what was that photo with the most likes? Is just the photo of the egg or something like that. You guys know what I'm talking about?
I think the
Yeah.
photo
Potato's the best one.
I think the photo with the most likes is actually posted by a soccer player.
I don't know. There's something with like a photo of an egg, like maybe it wasn't even on it. Anyway, whatever.
Soccer
I've
players
got-
have an eye for composition, man.
I've got a friend who left art school, and one of his lecturers said, if everybody likes your work, you're doing something seriously wrong.
Yeah. Leonardo
Okay.
Messi, ranked #1, celebrating winning the 2022 FIFA World Cup. Second place is world record egg, photo of an egg.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
Nice egg.
Third place is also Leo Messi with in bed
Damn.
with mate drink in the FIFA World Cup trophy.
So he's like the best photographer in the world. He's surpassed Peter Lick even.
You could get a Flickr account.
Wow,
Can't
that's
do that.
something.
I thought Leo Messi and Peter Lick were the same person.
Could be.
Could be.
I think Peter Lick is a hologram. Ian Brown.
Could be. That looks like film.
Wow.
Yeah, I'd never heard of Ian Brown before.
Yeah, Ian's. This is a picture that stood out to me in a maybe a slightly perverse way, because I know a lot of people don't like it. And I'm not sure you were a fan of this one that as much as I am, probably, because I thought this was fantastic. But I think it's fantastic because I often like pictures that take awkward viewpoints, awkward compositions, and make something really intriguing. And I love this way this plays with space and perceptions. And there's little things about the picture. I just love the way the sense of the diagonals working through the picture towards the top left, and the light with the diagonals at the top left as well. And it's one I kept on coming back to. And a repeated theme in our competition with the judging is how their opinions change from the first moment when they get the pictures to the finals. And I wrote an article in our last book about this, showing how the pictures actually won. Some of the judges scored at 0. which is perverse because the average score would have put it down at the bottom 3/4 of the whole scoring system. And part of this is because there's no way you can accurately score pictures going through them en masse. You know, you're trying to grade 2,000 pictures. It's very difficult. And we have multiple stages because of this. So we have a first stage where everything gets assessed. Goes to a second stage where it comes down to maybe half the number of pictures or a third. And those go through to all the judges and they get assessed. And then we send them back to them and say, can you go through them again, check your scoring? Can you pick out now your favorites? And then we go back to the finals live event where people go again and look at them. We start discussing them. And people's opinions change during that process. And one of the great things I like about our live judging process is when we get the judges to say why, because each judge brings their 3 favorites in a category. So we will end up with 15 in each category. And each judge goes through and says why they like that as their favorite. And the judging, how long did that judging take when we did it with Joe in the second year? We were doing it for 6 hours?
Yeah.
5 or 6 hours. And, you know, it's an hour and a half per category. So we were taking 20 images, maybe in the end, we probably cut them down very quickly to 6 images and talking about those for an hour. And people's opinions had changed already in their scores. And then people's opinions were changing again. And I love that. I love how when you live with an image for a while, it changes. And the great images are the ones you can keep going back to and getting something more out of them.
Yeah, it's like the definition of a classy image. Like it doesn't matter what trends are going on or anything. Like it's always going to stand the test of time.
Yeah,
well, that's one of the things I really like about the process we implemented for NLPA for judging.
Well, that's the thing. It seems like you guys take into consideration a lot of things that other competitions don't, like what Tim was just saying.
Yeah, I mean, you think about like Epson or International Landscape Photographer of the Year, it's all score-based. There's no dialogue. There's no discussion of images between judges. It's all just scored, and they take the average score. And what you end up getting is you get the images that were disliked the least by the highest number of people. And
that's a horrible way.
So what you end up getting as winners is images that have like very fast visual impact, like strong image appeal, very quick, very fast, but then it fades away very quickly, right? Whereas the images I feel like we promote through NLPA, they're a little bit more timeless.
More of a slow burn where you like it more and more. It grows on you. It ages well.
Yeah, the longer you sit with it, like a good wine or
complexity isn't an issue. Complexity is an attribute.
It takes time to appreciate fine images, and the way you just talked about, Matt, the other process, you don't need humans to do that. You just can create a computer program and just scan the images and let a computer decide, because it's no different than what that process is. If you just score it and that's it.
The great thing is during that first year when we brought all the images to the final discussion, and it was done by average score, is a few of the judges, and we like some of our vocal judges, said, "Why are my favorites not in the final?" And we went, "Oh, well, hold on, that's a real problem. If the judges' favorites aren't in the final, what the fuck are we doing?" And so we went back and said, okay, let's just scratch this whole idea about having the ones for the average scoring. Let's say each judge brings their favorite images to the final and defends them and explains them and talks about why these are the images that stood head and shoulders above everything else in the competition. Or, maybe just were a bit better, but they're the ones that they recognize as saying, this does something to me. And they can make those choices based on the scores from the other judges. They saw the other judges' scores. So perhaps they'd go, okay, I've got 10 favorites, but I stand a chance with these, maybe. But then again, the nice thing about the competition is we have the book. So each judge's favorites could end up in the book, even if they don't end up in the finals and they don't win. So the representation there of what the judges love, it still stands.
What's something different that you guys have noticed from like the entries this year compared to the previous years
Ooh,
overall?
go on, Matt.
I have to think about that for a second.
Remind myself.
Like it seems like each year
Nobody
there would
can
be
see my
like, wow,
screen
there's a
then.
lot of this kind of scene this time, or oh, there's a lot more of, you know, this style or this kind of lighting. It seems like you would just naturally notice like, oh, this is different from previous years.
Was there a lot of aerial photographs?
Well, there's always a lot of aerial photographs, but I guess one thing, it's not necessarily indicative of this year, but one thing that I've noticed is that there's not, and this is like every single year almost, there's just not that many people submitting really interesting, unique, and kind of timeless grand scenic images. Like
Yeah.
we get tons and tons of really fascinating, intimate and abstract and, you know, close-ups and that kind of stuff. Like tons.
What would you
of it.
categorize this photo here as in your competition?
Ooh,
That's a
yeah,
grand
it's a tough one.
landscape.
That's a grand
Yeah.
landscape, yeah, I would say so.
For
To
sure.
me, it's like a very intimate composition because it's all about these diagonal lines rather than like the actual objects, which is
Yeah.
not
For
typical
sure,
for
but,
grand
like-
landscape, but it is like a wide, big scene.
Yeah,
But-
definitely.
But I mean, like if you cropped like the top third of that scene off, it would feel much more intimate, right?
Hmm.
And
It,
we get
represents
a
a
lot,
broad view, doesn't it? That's rare, I think.
and I,
what we get.
and I don't know what it is like. And maybe it's just the genre of grand scenic images, or maybe it's because of the rules that we put out. Like you can't composite in skies, and you can't.
Well, when people submit their images, they choose what category it goes into. Do a lot of people mislabel their images?
Yeah,
Do you feel?
all the time.
Yeah.
But we
what's
go in
what's the
and
biggest like mislabeling that happens?
I would
Intimates?
People
say it's between-
telephoto shots is an issue. Long focal
Like they think
length
it's
shots
abstract
of
just because it's
landscapes.
telephoto?
Or they think it's grand landscape because it's got a horizon in it or whatever, you know, it's that sort of thing.
But grand landscape could be telephoto. So what's like the characteristic that you're saying that?
It could like I feel like we've
Disqualified.
talked about this before, Eric, but like the way that we see grand scenics is like there's multiple characters in a play, right? You have like this little rock and a bush and like
Not minimalist. It's
it's not, but it could be taken with a 400 millimeter lens, right? Like in the distance, but it's not necessarily the focal length that matters. It's the fact that it represents a broad view
Yeah.
that includes lots of different
lot
aspects
more
of the
elements.
landscapes. Whereas like intimate scenes typically are distilled down. They're a little bit more minimalistic. They tend to have
focused
there's
more
just-
on details and nuanced things rather than
If
larger lines.
you just took the top left-hand quarter of that picture on the screen now, that would be a telephoto shot essentially, but it'd still be a grand landscape because it's got a broad stretch of landscape in it. You know, it's representing an area.
Even though it would be like minimalist because it's just like repeating diagonal layers.
But the landscape is obvious. It's, you know, you can see the mountains, you can see the form of the
Right.
land in front of it. So it's more about the story it tells, like Matt said. It's
Yeah.
but no, I'd say, and I sometimes think this is, we get a lot of mountain photographs. So we do grand landscape and we get tons of pictures of mountains, and I think people sometimes mistake the two. Or the fact is, mountains are often seen as special in a way because they're amazing. You know, they have that
They are
sublime
undeniably
power.
impressive and they're dominating and
Exactly.
naturally stand out. They dwarf everything else.
So, but I love broad strokes of landscapes that don't have mountains in, that are more subtle, or that are
Yeah, like a desert canyon or
Yeah,
sand
or-
dunes or
or just broad rolling hills.
I mean, not
I
to
mean,
get
could a
Yeah.
forest scene be a grand landscape in some way?
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. If you've got the shape of the land behind it,
Mm.
I would say so. Normally,
I mean,
Kind of
normally,
ambiguous.
I think what we suffer from is a little bit of self-selection bias. Like the people that tend to submit images to NLPA, you know, because of our rules, like you can't do tons and tons of crazy edits. I think most people who are drawn to the grand scenic type images, they're for whatever reason, they're also the kind of person that loves to composite in skies and like do a lot of perspective blending and
Well, it's
things
like what kind of
that.
compositing are you going to do in like a minimalist, like small
You're
detail
not.
scene? You know, you just don't have
And
a
I
lot
think-
of options.
And I think the people that are attracted to our rules and our ethos are people that were never really that into the grand landscape type photograph or the classic kind of thing that's become popularized with like, you know, Mark Adamus and things like that, like where you take crazy bombastic light and sky and you put it into a scene on another photograph or whatever. Like, you know, the stuff that became popular and because of Mark Adamus, basically. I mean, that kind of stuff, like that stuff doesn't work in our competition because we don't allow that type of photography to be submitted. And
I see what you mean.
And I think it's also really difficult to take it's difficult to take a picture of a grand landscape. A lot more difficult than taking it. No, okay. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying
there's a lot more that can go wrong when you include more elements in a scene. You got to consider more things. Everything has to be flowing together somehow.
You got to take your time to get the light right, and the light just might not happen. If you want to recompose, you might have to move a mile to the left.
Yeah, and it's hard. So you have a couple things, right? Because of the ephemeral nature, like if you're including the sky, like the sky needs to be interesting, right?
Right.
So that's.
But you don't need to include the sky for a grand landscape, right?
You don't. But I mean, typically,
like, wasn't Michael Fry's winning image in the first year?
Yeah,
you can represent it without the sky.
But my point is like the typical grand landscape scene. You've got foreground, midground, sky, right? And so so like to get the conditions to line up correctly, like the photograph behind me, like in real life without compositing, that's actually pretty rare. Doesn't happen
but if you look at like Floris van Bruegel's like mountain stuff in the Sierra Mountains and stuff, like lots of blue, clear skies and really amazing photos, grand landscape stuff.
Totally agree, but most people don't chase that.
Yeah, people don't want to try it.
Well, it's harder.
It's harder.
It's really composition dependent.
And then the last thing is like, I feel like grand landscapes in general, it's really difficult for it to be surprising to the viewer, especially for a panel of judges and prejudges that are very, very, very familiar with the genre, right? Like you're going to show me a scene of, you know, Schwabacher's Landing at Grand Tetons that I've seen 4,000 times before.
Yeah, you got to hike way the fuck out there and go somewhere nobody's been before in a way.
So it's really hard to submit a grand scenic image that's has shock appeal, right?
Because less personal, less specific.
Right. Yeah. So I just feel like the stakes are much higher.
Yeah, I agree. That's like over the years as I've become a better photographer, that's one thing that hasn't gotten easier. The wide grand landscape stuff. If anything, it's harder because I just consider more things and I'm like, holy shit, like, you know, there's so many things not going right that I probably just ignored in the beginning. So I felt like it was easy, but now it's like, oh my God, like that boulder over there, this tree over there is just really ruining things. Like, and there's just no way around it. I'm just not going to shoot this scene. I'm going to go find something else. Like that happens all the time to me now.
The other thing is it's a question of how much you're going to miss out on by standing in that one place waiting for the right light.
Exactly. Yeah. And I get frustrated because I'm like, man, I could probably go find 5 like really nice intimate scenes throughout this morning rather than just sitting on this comp that might never pan out the way it needs to.
I think a lot about this because I have, like, you probably know this, Eric, but like my absolute favorite thing is Colorado mountains in the fall. Like that's my absolute favorite thing to photograph. But in terms of the grand landscape, I can only think of probably 6 or 7 scenes in all of Colorado, fall color, that I haven't been able to execute upon with good light, you know, the idyllic conditions. And the thought of chasing those scenes year after year to me is like so exhausting, you know, like I could spend that time looking for intimate scenes and
drinking beers, shooting aspens and amazing light on a clear day.
Yeah, exactly. And so I just feel like, you know, like in order for those types of photographs to manifest themselves in a way that hasn't already been done before, it's such a high bar.
So that is something I just noticed about this scene that I didn't even consider before, but this is just like a clear sky day and it is a compelling image. So I like that about this as well. Nothing crazy going on in the sky, but you don't need it.
It's because of the proportions.
Exactly.
That works.
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of like how this one is slightly wonky, you know, just it has like a certain offness that's appealing to me.
There's that visual ping pong.
I feel like as amazing of a scene as it is, because I did notice that about the sky too. There's so many things about it. I was like, I wouldn't I wouldn't shoot, like, I don't know. I wouldn't think to shoot this way. But it works the way that he constructed it and composed the image.
It all connects.
It really does.
It's got
totally
really good
That
flow.
vision is so impressive, you know.
Really good flow.
It's like the lines
Yeah.
get more and more horizontal as you go to the back. You know, the diagonals get they're like really steep in the beginning, and then they mellow out.
Yeah.
So cool.
This could be really interesting in black and white too.
Yeah. Tonally, it's brilliant.
It's very dramatic.
Okay, now it's getting weird.
Weird.
Once you start talking about black and white, that's where I'm like, all right, let's.
This is.
going.
I include this one because it's a great story.
Wow.
One it says.
So this image, like, if you just saw this anywhere, you'd be like, bullshit.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's something that
AI.
I enjoy about the Natural Landscape Photography Awards. Long fucking name, but it just like legitimizes stuff that you would your first instinct or guess would be like, oh, this is composite or at least an exposure blend, or
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. And it happens so many times with the competition as well. We've had, I think it was a Bree Stockwell picture where it just looked alien. I think it was a picture of landscape, very, very magenta cast to it. It was frost with foliage and the red canyons in the background. And I thought there's no way that can be real. And they popped up the raw file and it was just like untouched, no edits almost. And so it's great to see. It's great to be able to trust pictures because our cynical nature now is just up there somewhere.
It's
Right.
getting worse.
Yeah, when
Yeah.
something's
Yeah.
crazy, we think it's fake.
How can that be real?
Well, us as seasoned photographers think it's fake, but I think the general public mostly trusts photography.
True.
I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not
For
as up
now.
to speed.
Probably Photoshop, they might say.
Yeah.
Right. Which is a whole other thing.
But this
So
is
what
a
do
great,
you? Yeah.
really
what do you like about this
interesting-
one besides just the
I mean,
moment?
it's sublime. It's the Matterhorn with just ridiculous lightning coming off it. I mean, it's well composed. The balance is good.
Well, the way it's composed, like, I guess you guys would know if they cropped in on the raw file or not.
yeah, there's
but
not
like-
much done to it. Pretty close.
Okay, because the way it's composed looks like they almost anticipated it.
I know. Yeah. The left hand edge, I think, was just altered slightly to frame the edge of that lightning that bounces off the edge of the frame, but that was it. So
Wow.
I think the timing is so important on lightning, right? But
yeah,
I always miss it.
People use lightning
So
triggers,
Yeah.
and so this is a lightning trigger picture because I think in many ways it's
Okay.
fairly essential.
Yeah, I have at least 5, maybe 10 images in my portfolio that should have had lightning, but I just never hit the shutter at the right moment.
Yeah.
So talk about timing. I mean, I was in Morocco and some of my participants had a camera that actually triggered when lightning struck. So I have no
That's
idea
right.
what brand. So they never missed all the lightning shots and I missed them because they told me they had, I don't know what camera they had, but I don't pay attention. But it triggers when the lightning hits. So
The
works
camera
off a-
itself, they didn't have like a plug-in little sensor thing for the hot shoe.
I'm not sure, but it actually made a snap when the lightning struck. So they never missed any lightning strikes.
It'll be a plug-in. I don't think any camera has one built in. It's
must be a
a
plug-in.
radio. It's a radio receiver. You know, you get the glitch of signal on radio when you get lightning
Right.
strikes.
Yeah.
It sits and waits for that.
If I do remember, it was a Sony camera, but anyway, yeah, I thought that was fascinating. And I thought, how can you possibly hit every one of these? And they said, oh, I have it in software or something.
Yeah, so you can basically set it so that it exposes for how many seconds after a strike. Or you can put it on a time lapse and capture it so as it waits and sits and maybe takes a photograph every 5 seconds. But when lightning strikes, it does it for a little bit longer to capture the frame.
Yeah,
But
so
you need one of these.
So in MEOPS.
It's a lightning trigger.
Yeah.
oh,
yeah.
that's
Where the
that's
lightning
what I was-
photos at, Matt?
I haven't used it yet.
So
But the interesting
When-
story about
when
this is we had
Yeah.
somebody send an email into the magazine via Sandra Bartoka to say, I'm really sorry, but somebody's stolen my photograph and submitted it into the competition.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah, that's right.
What? And she said, yeah. And Sandra Bartoka, you know, she's a well-known photographer. She said she sent me the raw file, and it is the same. And
So
we're
they're
like,
standing next to each other?
holy cow, what's going on? He was down by the river and she was standing in a hotel room about 20 meters away on a balcony. So the parallax was almost exact as well. This mountain in the foreground is actually maybe about 3/4 the distance to the Matterhorn. But if you flick between the two images framed, you can see the parallax just changing slightly. But all the lightning is exactly the same.
Oh my God. Wow.
Wow.
And so they both used lightning triggers, and it was the only strike that night. So the whole of the night there was nothing, and it was one strike.
I've been to the Matterhorn too, by the way. Just a little flex right there. That was the same trip that I went to Scotland.
Is it good?
The Matterhorn,
Did you
cool
climb
area.
it?
It just feels like you're at a fucking ski resort though. Like it doesn't feel like wilderness at
Right.
all. Tons and tons of people just walking.
Could you
around.
imagine though if that was like at the end of your like 20-mile backpack?
Yeah.
That'd be so
Yeah.
cool.
If it was wild, yeah. Dude, I always think about like Zion. If it wasn't a national park and that was just a canyon, like a lonely ass, quiet canyon you're backpacking, like, oh my God, that'd be so
Oh,
epic.
So awesome.
Yeah.
The
But,
lightning in that is just so. I think this is one of these positive strikes. So
Okay.
occasionally you get the lightning where the cloud separates. So normally you get negative at the bottom of a cloud, positive at the top. But if the cloud, if the winds are higher above it, it pulls the positive top of the cloud away, and then you get a strike from positive to ground, which can be 10 times stronger and wild.
Wow.
Mr. Bill Nye over here.
Told you, Renaissance man.
Neurodivergent shite.
I don't think he knows Bill Nye. It's,
I do, yeah.
oh, okay.
Bill Nye is world famous, dude.
Dude, I actually know somebody who dated him. I'll just leave it right there.
Damn.
Yep.
I'm officially clinically neurodivergent, as I found out this year. So I'm happy. It explains a lot about my life.
About the
I
five
think we're all a little neurodivergent after a few double IPAs.
Absolutely. The 5 cats is definitely a factor.
Yeah, it's cool to hear a bit
common.
more context though from you guys about this image because yeah, this is one that I was blown away from. It just wasn't something that I expected in the competition results.
No. And the interesting thing was a lot of the judges who were quite cynical about, amazing cliche pictures were like, yeah, that's pretty damn good.
So this is black and white, right? Under the category of black and white.
No,
No, it's color.
This is color.
There
It's
is
just
some color.
stormy.
There is some color. It's just yeah.
on
very
Zoom it's
blue.
probably desaturated, but
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it looks great.
it's mostly like monochromatic, but the
So,
sky just has like a slight purplish tint to it.
Outside that software that triggers when the lightning hits, if you're in a nighttime situation, you can just leave your shutter open and not overexpose it, and it'll expose the lightning, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
it's kinda
absolutely.
different,
Yeah.
Cool.
By the way, Richard, not to change the subject, but I just thought of it and I wanted to give you some kudos. Earlier this year, I was in Paris and I went to the famous cemetery there. I don't know if you've ever been there
yes.
before, but they have all of these metal kind of grave sites that are like rusted metal and stuff. And I remember the podcast episode we did where you talked about wabi sabi and things that are not perfect and things like that.
Right.
And I found the most interesting decaying metal scenes there. And I was like, I'm going to channel my inner Richard Martin today. And I got some really cool photographs in a cemetery.
Well, that's nice. Yeah, pictures are everywhere. That's good.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Good to hear.
That's awesome.
Wow. This is one of my favorite photographers.
Oh, great. I'm glad of that.
I have 4 of his books.
Yeah, he released so many books.
Actually, back in maybe more than 20 some years ago, I stopped in at Freeman Patterson's house and I just drove a long distance because we both did keynotes at a conference. And I walked in and sat down. He said, here, he handed me this book, A Tree, a Blade of Grass. He said, this will revive you from your 5-hour drive.
Yeah.
So I immediately went home and bought all his books. And yeah, so anyway, sorry about that. But it's really, he's amazing.
A tree, a blade of grass is the classic.
And hills of color and so on and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, and he also did a lot of general pictures of towns in Japan as well.
Yeah.
An amazing amount of summer pictures of fields and agriculture and things. But the Nippon Alps book is fantastic.
I have that one too. Yeah.
And we have Germany to thank. He was incredibly popular in Germany. So a German publisher did really good reproductions of his books. And
his son is also a photographer now as well.
Oh wow!
Yeah, what's his name?
Geez,
the other day.
It escapes me, but yeah,
I've got one of his books. Yeah,
I thought the name sounded familiar. And then when you guys were talking about that, I was like, oh shit.
Which one's that one?
He's not.
This is Fotografien von Shinzo Maeda.
Oh, okay, yeah, the compilation one. Yeah,
okay. His son is
my good friend, an amazing photographer, Jim Basia. He sends me lots of photography books.
Yeah. I can see why he likes them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. He sent me this one.
Mark Davis, who was on my podcast, he lives in Japan, and he sent me this book called Photo Box.
Yeah.
Which is all full of Shinzo Maeda photographs.
Is that? I've not seen that one.
Yeah,
I've seen the cover of that one, but
it's like 300 pages of photographs.
Can you give me the ISBN of it if you can? Because I'd like to see that.
I can do that.
Dai Japanishian Alpins, like the Japanese Alps, I guess.
Nippon Alps, yeah, Japanese Alps, yeah.
That's cool. A lot of the stuff you wouldn't even expect to find in Japan, like the landscapes.
Oh,
the great thing, you look at the back of his book, and he shot in 10:8, 5:4, Hasselblad. And he just got a great vision of it's a very Japanese. I mean, you look at Michael Kenner's books, and Michael Kenner, he must have been a fan of Shinzo Maeda because he copied so many of the styles of this.
It's the same turf, right? It's the same place that Michael Kenner. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And what also that Shinzo Maeda was amazing at, you'll see in his books, is the tree forest photography.
Wow.
Absolutely stunning.
I was going to say the other thing is there's a lot of imperfections in his photographs that he actually leverages to make the compositions better.
You could learn a lot from him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's well worth. I mean, okay, you can take the books and say there's in a modern era, there's quite a few photographs that don't really hold it up, but there's something like in this photograph here, you got this yellow trees at the bottom of the picture that don't really fit in. Does it matter? No. There's a feel to them, and I think that it's that sense of a moment. There's Ruskin, a painter and critic from Britain in the Romantic era, had this idea of a scene viewed at a moment in the corner of your eye. So when you're driving, sometimes you just have this feeling. You glance to one side through the window.
The 35 mile an hour rule, where everything looks better.
Exactly, yeah. And it's that sense of when you're
drinking,
you're not analyzing. It's just a vision of something. When you're walking, you might see it. You might walk up to it and can't find it. But there's something there. And
I don't know if you guys follow Arnold Heitman.
Yeah, of course. He's actually going to be on the show very soon.
Okay, but when you look at a lot of his photographs, there's a lot of kind of that Japanese minimalism in his work as well.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, he lives in like a winter.
Yeah.
Kind of perpetual winter landscape, but
if you could own one book of his, a tree, a blade of grass is the one I would highly suggest, and then second to that would be a Hills of Color.
Yeah.
Cool. And I work with a guide in Japan. I've done 2 photo tours there, and she was saying that it's become so popular now, Kaida, that it's become like Iceland, where there's just hundreds of people flocking there and overwhelming the place. So
because these are all working farms where people go around and take their pictures in Hokkaido.
And then people are getting disrespectful to the locals, and it's started to cause problems with
fucking bastards.
So you know what happened to Iceland? It's kind of similar.
Yeah.
Photographers don't do that. Come on.
No.
I mean, to be fair, it's like influencers, which I don't consider photographers. They're
no. No,
or subhuman.
But there are a lot of workshops being run in.
I was being sarcastic. There's lots
it's
of.
I know it's really
there are a lot
up.
of shit photographers. That's for sure. But it's more like the influencer style. People that
I had that book
use the
28 years
place.
ago, and actually Freeman told me that he was inspired by him. That was one of his.
All right, that's cool. Because this is the mid 80s, early 90s, isn't it? Mostly.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. It's very very old. I mean, not old, but you know.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
There's great work done. It doesn't have to. It doesn't matter about time. It's just some work is timeless. It doesn't really matter about years.
The fascinating thing about Shinzo Maeda is he didn't really. He was outside of influence in many ways. You know, he wasn't getting a lot of material from America or Europe about photography. He wasn't involved in the circles of what was cool or what was artistic. And Japanese art at the time wasn't like the Romantic period wasn't important in Japan. So it sits very, very alone artistically.
Tim,
Really
that's one of the things I love about NLPA is we've been exposed to the work of lots of really interesting Japanese photographers like
Oh man,
like Shoho Shino and people
Those
like
guys
that.
out there are killing it. I mean, their work is just.
We have got more
Misaki
Japanese
Nagao.
entries this year, which is really interesting. There's definitely more.
Yeah.
Yuki Kamishima.
Yuki Kamishima. Yeah.
it's not surprising because Japan has. I mean, for me, on every level, I come from architecture, but industrial design, graphic design, everything has this
State-of-the-art.
minimalist. It's just such a interesting,
Super intentional and deliberate. The lifestyle too. Like,
it's a good on it. It checks all the boxes for me.
did you guys watch that series on Hulu, Shogun?
No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I gotta
so
watch
good.
that, dude. I just
The
got Hulu because of
cinematography
that.
is.
Oh my god, it's so good, and every episode gets better and better. But my favorite thing about it, because I'm going to Japan in January, and Japan was never really like a place on my list, but Mark Davis and Shosh, invited me out there, so I was like, all right, I'm gonna go hang out with these guys because they're fucking awesome. I got so excited because the culture, like, I just love like the deliberateness of everything that show. Like, I feel like the main thing that show like teaches you is just like the culture of Japan and how everything is like so deliberate and so thought out. And I don't know, that was the coolest takeaway from that show for me. But
It's something
really
interesting about the Shogun series is the cinematographer decided he wanted to use a lens manufacturer called Hawk, who manufacture lenses who are basically large format lenses from the 1920s, which are the same lenses that were used on Hollywood artists from that era. If you got any see old pictures of the black and white greats, and you look in the corners of the frame, a lot of people will put off by this, but the swirly effects you get on the edges of some large format cameras, and the really weird drop focus where you might have a focus in the center, but the sides are actually focused closer. So you see a lot of this in the cinematography as well, but it's fantastic.
It's really good.
That's great.
Yeah.
It's like Japanese Game of Thrones.
Yeah, absolutely. Story is astonishing. Yeah.
And Eric, I think you would appreciate in Tokyo, for example, when you're walking around, every so often in districts, they have digital readouts of decibel noise. And they're very fussy about how much noise there is in the city. And they actually monitor it by a digital readout like you would temperature. Yeah. So they don't, and you're in a coffee shop, they don't like people being loud. It's very quiet. And I remember you talking about
just so conscious
and measuring. You were measuring
dream culture right there.
Yeah, I did a study in a place that I love because it is very wild and remote, but planes pass overhead more often than they should because it's really noisy. It's like about as loud as thunder. So I did a study there. I had to collect data for at least 3 mornings without any kind of interruption, like no lightning storms or anything, which is kind of difficult in the Rocky Mountains. But it was to like establish like the base level noise of there. And so the point of that was like to either keep the air traffic where it is right now, or hopefully like maybe even reduce it a little bit and have flights reroute around the mountain range.
I remember seeing your video clip about that. It was very fascinating.
Yeah, if you've never read One Square Inch of Silence by Gordon Hempton, that's a really good book that I read like while I was making Space Stillest Silence. So
Yeah.
he was somebody that I talked to like while I was writing that book and stuff, and he's a really nice guy.
Eric, I was going to say one thing that I appreciate about your latest book, Space Stillness Silence, is it definitely has that intention behind it, that almost that Japanese aesthetic that feels very intentional, and everything's kind of put into the place in just the right way, and it has that kind of feel to it. So I really appreciate that about your book.
Thanks, man.
Very good.
I'm 2% Japanese, so
2%.
no, I don't know.
Yeah, I wish I knew what the book looked like.
Oh,
You've seen him. You saw it before like anybody else, Mikey.
His bros get the last copies. Come on, man.
Oh, this
Fucking
one?
tire marks
This one?
on 'em.
Yeah, I know. Yep, that's the one.
Well, hey, Richard and Tim haven't even ordered one yet, so it's kind of awkward.
Well,
Oh, snap.
They're like, I'll pass on this one.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to pass. I'm worried about not being home because I'm leaving for a long time and I don't want to be delivered and not pick it up, and I don't have anywhere to.
Sit outside in the rain for a couple of weeks.
I'll send one back with Andrew Malinsky when he comes out here.
I'm just going
Right,
to pinch
yeah.
Alex nails like I did the last one.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
That's funny because
So-
we were talking to him. Like, I feel like there's a service that could exist that could make a lot of money where people just like consolidate print book orders for photography books. Like
Yeah,
New
absolutely.
Zealand,
Yeah.
Australia, UK.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you could kill it.
So
Yeah,
very
sure.
quickly, Eric, can one order something from you, a book from you, and say I want to deliver it in October instead of now?
Yeah, that's fine. Just tell me and I just won't ship it. I do all the fulfillment, so
Okay, I'll do it tomorrow.
That was embarrassing me.
the only
You're not
reason, 'cause I
embarrassing me
wasn't
to
gonna be
order.
That's the only reason you invited him to this, huh, Eric?
yeah. Tim, what's your answer?
I'm still borrowing Alex's before I buy it.
Gotta test drive it.
Yeah, you gotta do the
Absolutely.
research.
I cracked open a triple IPA. We were talking about these earlier. So this one's a
God.
10% IPA called Surge Juice
How
from our
strong can you
good
get them
buddy, our other Jimmy friend, Jimmy Tran, who's
right.
a brewer
Humble Sea.
and photographer at Humble Sea Brewing.
How strong can you get them if it's like a quadruple IPA or something?
I've had quadruples, quintuples. Yeah, you just gotta watch more episodes, man.
I've drank 16%. I think that's the strongest.
That'd be a
Beer I've
sextuple.
had. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Where does it end anyway? How when do they put
On
a
the
cap
floor.
on the doubles?
there's
Green
no end. Yeah.
alcohol.
Yeah, in the worst bathroom in London. Train Spotting. I love that movie. Nectaron, Mosaic, and Centennial hops in this one.
Dope.
Richard, did you pour another beer secretly?
I did. It's from the same company. It's Fine Balance, but it's called a Double Tiptoe IPA. Only 8%, but it's malted barley, oats, and hops. So it doesn't list the hops, but the difference between the first one was it had wheat, and this one has oats, but doesn't have honey. But it's
Sounds
really
great.
nice. It's very, very nice. actually.
8%'s very respectable. I'd say
Yeah.
only.
I'm starting to feel insecure because you guys are like pounding back 15%ers last show.
Mine's 0.5%, Richard, so or less than
What?
0.0. Mine's NA, so don't feel too insecure.
Okay, yeah, I thought I don't want to get beaten up by Eric. You know, I'm saying.
Yeah,
Called
can take 'em.
lightweight. I don't want to be called a lightweight. You know.
So I cracked another one too. This one is also by Wayward Land. But this can is pretty wild.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Psychedelic.
Yeah. But this one's called Enzyme Detonator. It's a double hazy IPA, 8%. But there's no stamp of what's in it yet. So I have to look it up. But
You're about to find out.
yeah,
What a great name, though. That's a great
based
name.
on
That is a cool name.
the critters that are put on the can. I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know if this is a live culture or
What are the critters?
They look like viruses and
God.
bacteria and parasites and
Well, since this is your last day on Earth, Jimmy, it's been nice knowing you, brother.
yeah. That's why
They
I'm wearing
had
the
you
black.
at
Hey,
Paris.
drink up, buddy.
Well, we didn't say much about this actual image, but I love like the overlapping here. That's what I really like the most.
That's killer.
Those like bare sections of the lake where the snow is uncovered, the trees overlapping like all of those sections.
And I feel
really
like
nice scene.
I feel like most people would be super compelled to crop off that bottom little sliver of like those green leaves because there's
Yeah.
They're orange,
but I think
They
but I think
add to
they're-
it.
the Reverend makes them green.
It's probably the teleprompter monitor I'm looking at, but anyway.
They look brown to me, but I like the
thing-
balance between the two ice parts that are, you know, darker tones. I like that balance between the two. Plus, there's a middle one, a little oval in the middle too. So stepping stones going through the picture space.
Yeah.
Mm.
And there's
Fabulous.
you can see the wind effects on the snow as well there. There's a sense of atmosphere in there.
In that classic square format.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared this guy's work because he's one of those people that probably nobody knows about, and they can find some great used books by him online.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a shame that you don't know if someone doesn't know about him. He's like iconic.
Is it worth
is-
talking about how so few modern photographers have any knowledge of like our predecessors? Like, is
Oh,
that
it's so
William-
important to know whose shoulders you stand upon. Like,
William Neal and I discussed this at length in Big Sur, and we're both of the same vintage. And like we get a real chuckle out of photographers talking about photographers in the 1980s that are historic, and we're inspired by photographers from the 40s and the 50s, and who cares what date it was? It's irrelevant. You can listen to music from back then. Anyway, so there's nothing more important than a photographer can do is just study the history of photography and really take a deep dive and research all these iconic, like Aaron Siskin. There's so many. Aaron Siskin is another one that really inspired me back in the 70s. But
apart
there's
from
a whole list of them.
just showing some respect and checking out the people that kind of established the current photography scene that we're all in right now, you know, the predecessors. You're just gonna have a great time like going down this visual journey and seeing like how mud cracks and leaves and shit, like those aren't new ideas. Like these are things that have been photographed for 50 or more years by people
you mean
with
you mean it's not a fad?
Exactly. I mean, just seeing how like intimate photography was kind of the norm, mainly because of like limitations, because of equipment and stuff, you know, like dynamic range and things like that, you know, shooting in soft light and including, you know, less variances of light and things like that. But I mean, you're going to learn a lot by going back a bit and checking out the early stuff.
But if you look at music students, they study like music from centuries before, right? And
painters,
I think
every
it's
other art form.
so important. And also just a photographer, not just to study historic photographers, but to study paintings. And you can do it informally, but it's going to really change the way you see the world.
I think it's interesting because I feel like photography, especially landscape and nature photography, because of digital, it's become so accessible, and because of YouTube, like learning the basics is not all that difficult in terms of you can get it pretty quickly and pretty easily. And whereas like painting and things like that, most people kind of go to school and they have like a mentor, things like that. And I feel like in our craft, there's been this huge disconnect with the people who have come before us. And the more and more I've thought about this, the more I feel like it's really kind of a shame. Like I feel like there's so much we can gain by studying our predecessors and the shoulders of giants that we stand in, like Eric was saying. So do you guys have any, like, where do you go for this other than books and things like that, or watching Brews and Views? Like, what are your favorite resources to tap into this kind of thing?
Well, you can research the history of photography and just start searching, just make a list. I mean, I did a Chicago presentation where I was always asked about influences. So I did a list of painters that influenced me from back in the 70s, 80s, all the way to now. And then I also included a list of photographers. But more importantly, those painters really established the way I see the world. And I think, and I don't have to be formally, you can just go to library, go to get books, you go to museums, galleries, just take it all in. And it doesn't mean you're copying it, but you're just, all of a sudden you're seeing the world a little bit differently. And I think it's very important. And that's something that's really lacking. I think that the technology I have such an eye roll, and I find that people like to do the backstroke and swim in this frickin' technology, and I don't give a shit about cameras or anything like that. I only care about the art of photography and the vision part. So I try and bring my craft up to meet my vision, and that's how I teach too, right? If people have ideas, I try and help them bring their craft to meet their ideas and vision. So I think too often it's the technical part, and they never leave the technical part. So that's my experience of 40 years of teaching. I see that happening.
One of the things I loved doing with On Landscape was I dug into the history of the landscape representation in art. And a while back, I was stuck in a job working at a research and a train company, and I got Bertrand Russell's History of Western Philosophy. And it sounds like a highbrow falutin thing, but what it did is it placed philosophers in the context of the times they were in. You know, nothing happens in a vacuum. A lot of stuff doesn't make any sense if it's talked about outside of its context. And so I decided to try and do the same for landscape and the history of art. So, you know, what happened? Where did the landscape start being represented? You know, the Romans decorated the inside their houses with pictures of, you know, trees and fruit and landscapes and things. And I've written about 5 articles, like the Dutch school of the golden age of landscape in the Dutch schools. And where did it come from? When did people start making art outdoors, you know, making observations of art? And that was really interesting for me, looking at the whole history of it, why people painted what they did. We've got another writer for us who wrote about the Impressionist movement and how that how people experienced art. You know, the fact that people moved to the same location to be around other artists because they found it more important to be around each other than the actual location necessarily, and the way they worked. So I loved all that. You know, you can look at pictures on their own and they don't mean too much because they're outside of the context of the age they were created. They might not be impactful in the same way, but you learn a little bit about them and they come to life, I think.
Richard, I love your suggestion of going to galleries and museums. I recently went to the San Diego Fine Art Museum, and it's part of that big complex. They have tons of museums and things like that. And the Museum of Photography, they had a bunch of Brett Weston images printed up and on display. And it was super interesting because I was there with my son and my wife. And
you said Brett Weston?
Yeah, Brett Weston.
Yeah.
Isn't that what I said?
Yes.
Anyway.
Is that Edward Weston's like son or something? Or
Yeah.
Well, there's Edward, and Brett and Cole Weston, right?
Yeah, I've heard of Cole Weston. I've never heard of Brett Weston.
Brett's amazing.
Oh man, Brett is my favorite.
Yeah, look at there's a series of books at Lodima Press, Lodima. They've done a series of about 15 books of Brett Weston's works that are printed in quad tone, and they're just gorgeous. Sorry, Matt, go on.
No. What was interesting about it was that I think there was 5 photographs. They're all black and white, so, you know, silver gelatin prints. And it was interesting because I reacted to all of them very differently. Like, and this can sound stupid, but like I actually found myself kind of critiquing them. Like, oh, this composition, I don't like where this is or that is. But then there was other images where I was
pretentious
like,
bastard.
I was like, this is incredible. And so like, I feel like just by studying kind of the older images, like you're going to also find ways to find preferences for your own photography through that process. That's going to help you grow as a photographer. I wasn't trying to be pretentious, Eric.
No, but that's the important thing. Not just looking at work, studying work, you know, trying to determine what decisions were made in the photograph, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have to say,
why did they do this? Why didn't they do that?
Brett Weston is probably the most underappreciated artist.
Yeah, I never heard of him. And
he's phenomenal, man. I mean, I was so fortunate in Big Sur because we got to spend 3 or 4 hours at Ansel Adams' house, where Ansel Adams' son lives. And we had so much introduction to his dark room and all his work. But we also spent time at Edward Weston's house, which was just down the street a bit. And his grandson, Kim Weston, lives there now. But we got to see his little dark room and the contact prints of the green pepper and all that stuff, and the books that were signed by famous artists all over the world. And wow, it was such a beautiful experience. And for me, 40 years ago, I had all these books on my bookshelf, and it was to see the originals and to see where he lived. And they kept his house basically kind of like that, but they also live in it. So it was pretty cool. But Brett was one of my favorite photographers for sand dunes. And if you could ever see his work, he's got some of the best sand dunes I've ever seen, black and white.
There's a book of the Brett Weston's sand dune work, isn't there? It's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. So anyway, it's all nice. But yeah.
Matt, you've had all of us on your podcast before, right? You've had Jimmy on, yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
Me.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. Sorry, I was muted.
I was gonna send you a message the other day. Just thank you for. I think you were like the first nature photography podcast. Maybe there were other ones before you, but they weren't as good.
And Matt chased me down after asking me 3 or 4 times, and I was too nervous to do a podcast. So he finally pinned me down, and my partner said, "Oh, Matt wants you to be on a podcast." I said, "I can't do it. I'm too nervous." He says, "I'm just typing back and say you're going to do it." So it's because of her that I had the guts to do it. So anyway, thanks.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, man, that's amazing. A huge thing you've contributed.
Yeah, really.
Thank you.
Insane.
I don't know how you keep up with it. We have a hard
your,
time doing
your work
2 episodes
ethic is insane.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Scheduling people is so difficult. That's the hardest part.
I'd crap at people, Matt.
It's a lot. It's a lot of work for sure. That's all I gotta say.
It's clear, Matt, that you don't have
Very
ADD.
polite.
That's very clear.
He's like
He has schizophrenia, though.
He's got continual hyperfocus. That's what he's got.
Yeah.
He's like
Tourette's, schizophrenia.
This is an amazing image. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, Veronica's
Let's
image
talk
blew
about
me
the
away.
photography, not about me.
Yeah. This is image that I'd like on my wall because
Where'd you find this, Tim?
This is in our competition. I think it was in our second book. It didn't win anything, sadly, but I adore it. Absolutely adore it because there's so much going on in it.
I demand a recount.
Yeah. I think you could. A lot of judges might write it off as being it's just more Aspen, isn't it? But
Nah, it's like Russian collusion that this one didn't win.
yeah, I mean the single Aspen in the middle in the gap, the head of the Aspen there is fantastic.
Yeah, it gives you a subject.
Apparently, not all judges are created equal.
That's so true. It is.
Yeah.
One thing that comes out of the competition more than anything I find is that there is no consistency.
There's always like one judge that hates my shit.
Well, just think about it. If
Just
you
one?
did the same thing 3 times with 3 different juries, they'll all be different results.
Well, and that's
absolutely.
actually why we change our judges up every year.
Good point.
Yeah, we should just use the same pictures and just have different judges every
It's
year.
like shuffling cards, right? But look at the way the bottom of this, if you read this from the bottom upwards, it's just so amazing as you follow that wonderful texture going up into the color.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jeez.
And I hate to harp on it, but like there's lots of imperfections in this photo that a lot of people would be compelled to get rid of. Like that bottom in the center bottom, there's that branch that kind of comes up
Diagonal.
from that diagonal, but like actually what it does is it's like connective tissue that leads you up into the next part of the photograph. So I feel like people need to stop trying to perfect their photographs.
Yeah, overanalyzing can be detrimental.
So the very thing you said, Matt, is it's almost like I find that people, and generally speaking, sanitize their images so much that it
Sterilize.
it strips of its life. Like it's like scrub with Javex. It's just stripped of any life. And I mean, that's just my opinion from my experience. But look at the way that little bit of the tree and the upper sort of left side, it sort of stops. Everything goes through the picture space, but that little bit of branches stops there, and it makes it a point of interest for your eye.
Yeah.
And those are little things that really are punctuation in the reading of that.
By the way, I know a place in Colorado where you could get this type of scene for like a week straight. And Eric, you've been there before with me. And it's so much fun.
The sense in this picture as well is that, I mean, the yellow in the center, that very bright area is overexposed, and it's overexposed in the picture, but it doesn't matter because it still works.
No. There's no correct exposure. There's only appropriate, right? And it really works here.
For me, the winner of this, other than that branch structure in the center, is all of those pock marks. I think it might even be like from a bear or something.
On the right hand side.
Yeah, that's just so fascinating.
It's all character, isn't it? It's all character.
Sometimes when I'm shooting like scarred aspens, I can't tell if it's like shit that people have carved into them, because people like to do that for some reason, or like, you know, where branches have broken off and it's left like the eye scars and stuff.
Look at the top left-hand corner of the two trees. They're almost like kissing each other with eyes, like some sort of cubist erotic.
Yeah, lots of nice details to appreciate if you give it the time.
Spoken like a true virgin that owns 5 cats.
And Mike's a virgin too. Doesn't have any
You've
kids.
been waiting for 2.5 hours for that.
Never had sex before.
He has.
So
hey, I mean, those of us that have kids, like, you know, we've done it. We got proof.
So back to Matt's thing. There's nothing there's nothing more boring than perfection. Think about that.
Yeah, that's a good quote.
Well, it's just the sanitization. It's like, you know, anyway, I see this all the time because I teach a lot of workshops, and I see a lot of images, and I see a lot of damage from conformity and people searching for, you know, awards and ribbons and so on, that they lose their personal thing, right? And I think that they're afraid of being not perfect, and that's the worst thing that could ever happen to you for your freedom of expression, right? So the great thing about observing painters is realizing how much crap they put in pictures intentionally. It's astonishing. You know, Andrew Wyeth. The Impressionists just throw random stuff at the edge of a frame that's half cut off. And a lot of the Japanese artists do the same thing. You know, you get like a foot hanging out of a frame for no reason, and they're doing it with choice. Yeah, in Canada, they're called the Group of Seven. They're historic painters. Oh my God, I just saw some recent releases of new books that summarize their work. And in a bookstore, I was just absolutely blown away and so excited about looking at their work. And I already know their work and I've seen it in museums, but these compilations were reminding me, oh my God, there's so much beauty out there. And they weren't, they weren't perfect paintings, but there's something about them that spoke to you. So
can you send me a link to the book? Because I'm interested in that.
Yeah, I could. I could send you. I'll send you. I always take pictures with my phone to remember where to find it.
Please do. Later. I love the Group of Seven.
My God, it's just like I can't even explain how amazing the work is. And and I'll send it to you for sure.
Mikey, did you just crack open a new apple? What kind is that? Is that Golden Delicious, Honey Crisp? Or?
No, it's a Cosmic Crisp. It's really good.
Oh yeah.
It's new. Good. I haven't seen them lately. Yeah,
they've been around for a year or two.
Yeah, aging well.
Yeah, nice.
So kudos to this photograph. This is so inspiring.
It's phenomenal. There's just
those are pine trees in the background too. By the way,
are you saying this didn't make it to the finals?
I don't think it did.
Sums up at that competition.
I think it got within about the last maybe 100 pictures, but it didn't get to the awarded, commended or anything.
Some fucking
it's so subjective,
of,
of course.
It is. That's the problem. And I think I don't know. There's so many pictures that are good when it comes to the final. We when it comes to the very last stage, we give the judges maybe 500 pictures per category, and there isn't a bad picture in that selection.
Yeah.
And hence the extended PDF that you guys do as well. Like
Exactly. Yeah. And how many pictures are in the book? Probably 200 photographers, maybe 180 photographers. And I'm still picking myself at excluding some stuff.
Yeah. It's good problems to have. I mean, it's just phenomenal. The level of work, but also the ability to share it globally is just
It's fantastic
unbelievable.
idea.
Yeah.
The book is one of the most lovely thing about getting it out there, and because you might not win the prize, you're unlikely to win a prize. Let's say it's, but getting in the book is a big thing, and seeing the pictures in the book printed is fantastic.
I mean, I always tell people that getting into the book is the ultimate prize, right?
Yeah.
Because unlike every other photography competition, if you're in the book, you get a copy, right? Which is super cool. And you have stuff like James submitted where it was an iPhone photo that's converted to black and white. That's just ICM, right? Like, and it's just an incredible photograph. And you get to see people's vision from all over the world. And I think it's just super exciting to be part of that community.
Tim, are you still involved in the International Landscape Photographer of the Year?
Yeah, I mean, the entries are just closing, I think, possibly soon. So I should be judging that again soon. And I still enjoy judging that, and that's an interesting one because there's so many pictures that are different. A lot of people who enter that competition enter some amazing work that isn't entered into our competition.
How did you get brought into that? Were you one of the creators of the competition, or?
No, I just got invited to take part.
And they've kept you.
Yeah. I think they seem to use the same judges mostly from year to year, and they've got quite a varied selection of what they like. We cover quite a few bases, and then they bring in one, the winner from the previous year, and perhaps one new judge per year. But it's a massive base. It's really interesting actually, because when I'm going through my judging of that competition is not really different from the way I look at judging the NLPA, but I take a more flexible outlook on things. I have to switch off my saying, okay, is this real or not?
Right.
Doesn't matter. This is just art. This is
just look at the photo.
Just look at the photo, appreciate it.
They have no rules, right?
Yeah.
No rules.
No AI.
No AI from what I know. Yeah.
But they don't take raw files, so there's no way of checking.
No. I mean, I presume if there's a question, they might request it just to say, have you passed the rules? I don't know. But I think there is something in there. 'Cause I mean, I don't know what about anybody else here, but I take probably maybe one in 10 of my pictures. I'll make edits that would probably exclude me from the Natural Landscape Photographer of the Year. Because I've warped things to exclude things from a foreground, or
that's your vice, the warp tool. Yeah. It's your weak spot.
If I'm taking really wide panoramas,
everybody's got one.
I will be selective.
We know what yours is, Eric.
But there is, you get the temptation to clone things. What I will do now, though, interestingly, I'll be very more careful. I'd prefer to subdue things than clone things out now every time.
Yeah, I prefer to darken stuff if I can. Cloning is like a last resort.
Desaturate.
Warping is even after cloning.
Yeah. I mean, we're a little bit flexible. I mean, we did have a judgment on should you be allowed to distort the corner of a picture slightly. Just pull one corner out to exclude something. And I'm like, well, is it being deceptive? That's our bottom line rule on everything. Is it deceptive? And if it's not deceptive, hey, what's the problem? You can use tilt lenses, you can transform things. You can.
In the first year, in one of my images, I filled in a corner. One of my images.
Did you get a slap for that?
Know.
No, I had fucking won.
You did?
Well, I don't think that's deceiving anybody. You
cloned a load of bushes out in one picture, which we chucked you out of.
No, it was it was my photo of a bare cottonwood with lots of colorful brush, and the top left corner was empty, and so I filled it in, and you guys didn't care.
Did you know
Yeah.
that you almost won Project of the Year, Eric?
Why didn't I? What do you mean?
Because you cloned
Wait.
too much shit out of your photographs.
But yeah, Tim asked me for like a new version. I sent it. So, but then you were like, "Oh, it sucks without the cloning," or what?
No, it was just one picture. There was that was the one that was borderline.
But then I sent you a version without the cloning. So
You did, but the
where's my
ones
fucking money?
the ones that were extreme, we chucked out. It's only when we get to the finals where we look at it. And
extreme.
go, oh my god, it's taking everything out. This is just AI.
Okay, look, let's move on.
Look at this. Look at this image.
Yeah,
Unbelievable.
you didn't give me any kind of an order, but I felt it was appropriate to end with David Ward. Start with Joe Cornish, end with David Ward.
Yeah. I think that's
Wow.
perfectly fine. David
buddies.
Ward has to be the most astonishing photographers of landscape I know. He's just got the most amazing eye, and I've been out with Joe, and I've been out with quite a few photographers. I've never been out with anybody where you can look at him in the corner of your eye and go, "What the is he taking a picture of?" And you go over and you lift the dark cloth up and look underneath, and you go, "You bastard!"
Yeah,
They just find a puddle on the floor with reflecting something on the side of a building or something. It's just it's stupendous. Yeah, he's
I love
good.
the way that blue flows through the picture space like a river.
that's what makes it.
Oh, the
Yeah.
color the color
Waterfall.
contrast too is fantastic.
Just the
And
whole
this-
overall structure.
This is classic white balance problems. People use auto white balance, and it's not a problem. I love just a good daylight white balance of everything, and I want to see the blue shadows. I want to see cool cast. I'll adjust it later, but my camera is always on D50, D55, 5500.
I always shoot in auto white balance because I feel like it brings out the cooler tones more than any of the other ones.
It depends on your camera model, really.
That's
And
true.
Yeah, I guess so.
How new the sensors are in technology, right?
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, a lot of times the auto white balance will reveal cooler tones that I'm not really noticing with my eye.
On my old
This-
DSLR, I used to use the same setting as my Velvia or Kodachrome film, which was, daylight. But with the
Yeah.
new technology and mirrorless with Nikon, I find that the auto white balance with favoring the cool tones seems to work best.
Yeah,
But it all
there's
depends
ano-
on what manufacturer you're using and what model.
I've got a Sony which has got underwater auto white balance,
Hmm.
which is fantastic because it's a cool auto white balance. So it fits
I mean,
it.
if you're shooting raw anyway, you can adjust it.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter at the end of the day.
It
It's
just
also
kind of
not
gives
written
you
in
some
stone.
creative insight, though. Seeing like cooler
Right, it's a
tones that you
starting
can't really
point, yeah.
notice.
It's a good starting point.
On my camera, I also stick my viewfinder on like a landscape mode, very saturated, very contrasting, because I want to see what colors are available. in a
Exactly.
scene.
I want to see the broadest variety possible.
Yeah, and then that's not what it's going to look like, but it's giving me an idea of the possibilities.
Right.
And that's one of the great things about the electronic viewfinder for me is that those possibilities. But saying that, when I work with a large format camera, after a while of taking pictures and seeing Velvia repeatedly, your eye starts to see it anyway in real life. You see the potential.
Yeah, you can recognize, those shadows could be a little bit more blue, or this could be more saturated.
This particular picture is the reason I picked up a large format camera for the first time. So we went on this trip to the Out Hebrides I talked about. And about 4 days into the trip, he pulled out a 40 by 50 Cibachrome of this.
Wow.
And it's just gobsmackingly beautiful. The crispness of the colors, the detail, everything about it. And I sold my digital cameras and bought an Ebony 45 SU. And spent the next 5 years shooting 5.4.
Is this like a fence?
Rest in peace, Cibachrome.
Did you say Cibachrome? Yeah,
This is a Cibachrome. Yeah, I mean, I think Fuji Crystal Archive was the later pictures, but this was actually a Ciba.
I've printed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Cibachrome prints back in the darkroom days of slide film.
Hard to work with, but when it works.
Yeah, it's limited. It's limitations, but it's beautiful. So this image, if you drop a pebble in water, you have this radial lines coming out of the.
Yeah.
It's just this beautiful central structure. that builds the whole thing together. And wow,
To me, the yellow center just makes it like
it's that
that's
color interaction, and
Yep.
Yeah.
exactly the warm and cool tone together, like just
And-
pow.
So like earlier we were talking about, over processed images. That blue is really, really saturated. Like I can tell that's like been pushed a bit, but it's very appropriate. Like it's achieving something in the scene, so it doesn't feel off.
I've scanned this for David, and the transparency is more bold than that.
So he even dialed it back a bit. But yeah, it's just appropriate. It has a payoff, so you're not bothered by it.
Exactly, and it is the contrast as well. It's just because the blue and the yellow are just perfectly contrasting.
Without it, it would not be.
Is that water behind it? Is that what that is, or
It's just a blue
Shadow.
sky.
Okay.
Yeah, blue sky shadows.
Like through a fence.
It looks like a fence to me.
It's basically,
Yeah,
I think
sure.
it's the back of it. Yeah, it's the back of a house and a fence. So the back of the house is in the shade.
that just shows you. You know
it's a
what? There's
fence flat.
photographs everywhere.
crazy? Yeah,
This is a true test of a photographer. If you can find this kind of thing in the ordinary, mundane, that is a true test of an artist.
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I believe
being
in
able to
that
drop them off
100%.
anywhere in the world, any time of the day, and they can make something amazing.
Just
have
go and
this-
go
I have
and look through
this-
David's portfolio and look
Yeah.
through his sort of like hand of man section.
I have
where
this
it's just-
dream. I have this
Exactly.
dream where it's almost like Naked and Fearless or whatever, where you drop off
Naked and
6
Afraid.
Naked and Afraid, and you drop off 6 photographers in the wild with like a camera.
And they're all
And-
naked.
Well, they don't have to be naked, but the idea is like whoever comes back and makes the most interesting photographs wins the competition.
I think that's
but-
cool.
Because you figure
that's
like
a fantastic idea.
Just drop them off in the middle of fucking Illinois or like.
yeah, no, it has to be somewhere super
Yeah,
mundane, like a
cornfields.
Walmart parking lot or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I like that.
I could,
It's-
Well, Walmart parking
you
lot. is,
wouldn't
like,
stand
always
out, that's for sure.
Guaranteed a crazy sky.
I'll do that.
Well, I would
Some-
put
some
money
nice
on
oil
David Ward
puddles.
because looking through that portfolio is just astonishing. It's just
so this is where you can see the true vision of the photographer, and this is uniquely their vision, right? And it's not obvious. Like some things can be somewhat obvious, but this is something that you have to find and you have to frame and compose, and there's no lines drawn in the fence, so to speak, whatever this is.
Yeah.
It doesn't really matter. And actual photographers should get away from labeling things and just appreciating whatever they're looking at as form, shape, texture, and so on. And
That's the
you'll
skill.
have a
It's-
much more enjoyable life if you can find photographs everywhere you go.
Yeah.
But David will wander around and he look like he's not doing anything because he's not taking pictures. He's just wandering around, looking
And
at things,
just
wandering
no
around.
preconceptions.
And then he'll
no-
take 2 pictures in 4 hours or 5 hours or whatever, but he'll sit there and wait and work it out.
and
I
no
was-
memorized vision and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. No
I
clothes
was-
on.
Would
will
you
say
say
that-
no clothes on?
Naked
will
and
say that-
afraid.
I will say that's the one thing that I've started doing with my photography in the last 7 years, not being naked, but just going out with no preconceived ideas and just observing the world,
Yeah.
and you come back with some of your favorite.
It sounds like
photographs.
such vague advice. Like
It does.
it's kind of hard to believe, but it's just true, man. I'm sorry. Like
If
It is.
yeah,
gotta be a blank
you will accelerate tremendously in your photography growth if you go out with no preconceived ideas, because all that leads to is disappointment, preconceived notions.
right.
So just be a blank blackboard and just go out and whatever, and even regardless of the light, like TJ says, just work with whatever light you have and forget about whether it's windy or not windy or sunny and overcast.
for a walk,
bring a
basically.
cooler
Go
with
for
a
a
few
walk.
beers in it, and no matter what happens, you'll have a good
Yeah.
time because afterwards you'll.
You may fall in the
Into the
water,
campfire.
but
That's what I do.
Yeah,
Just,
you're
you know,
guaranteed a good day if you have some beers in the cooler.
Make sure you know where the galactic core is on your PhotoPills app, though.
Oh my God. Who's
wow, look at this.
Yeah, so
Quiet.
I mean, we're just like on Matt's episode. We're gonna need to raw verify these before this goes live, Tim.
Right.
I'm skeptical of a few of these, but
This one's a transparency, so that's all right. I can show it. raw
Yeah,
scan.
I think it was from like 2002 or something
When I took pictures.
before you quit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of great photos, but I really, really liked this one because I really respect the fact that it's just rocks and ice and some water, but it's such a compelling, well-crafted composition. It's just, I could just look at this all day long, and there's really not a lot to it. Like, he did so much with so little, which I always really admire.
Playing around with the little flows there, because this was a river that got no, it didn't snow. It was very cold and it didn't snow for about a month and a half. And so you just got these bare bits of ice that were reaching across and then remelting and then reaching across and then remelting. And it was great just to go down the river and find moments where you could line up things. And
I see this stuff all the time, you know, like icy rivers. We have that here in Utah, but there's just something about like the way this composition flows so nicely that it felt really unique to me.
There's nothing wasted in the composition. Just everything is organized to the maximum, and there's nothing that takes away from the central idea.
That little blade of rock in the middle where the water's breaking across it was the bit that attracted me mostly to that section.
I love that little witch's finger in the upper left corner.
Oh yeah.
To me that's just like awesome.
Little dragon's head almost.
And the space around the edges, the relationship between those is like, it's not too tight, it's not too far, but the relationship within the elements really comes together and provides this dynamic design.
Tim, I can't remember when it was that you said this to me, but you were like, you pointed out that you thought it was funny at like how few vertical images I shoot. I think it's like after you reviewed my first book, Conversations with Nature.
Yeah.
Is that what it was?
I think so, yeah.
Which I didn't solicit that review, by the way. You went out of your way to do that because you liked it.
I did.
It's funny because looking through your images, I'm like, damn, this dude shoots like all vertical. So now I understand why you pointed that out, because you have a strong preference for vertical images, it seems like. Do you?
But very much so. And that
can you articulate why?
Yeah. Partly it's 5:4. 5:4 just works vertically. 2x3 doesn't,
agree.
Which is why it's very
Feels too
difficult
skinny,
to compose. Feels too skinny.
Need more
And then
girth.
trying to compose without a mask. I had an A900, Sony A900, where I took out the mirror focusing screen and masked it and put it back in again. So I actually had it as the viewfinder was 5:4.
Yeah, because you can't do a 5:4 crop in Sony's.
That's so annoying. That is so annoying.
It'd be such an easy firmware update.
Yeah, why we can't have
1x1,
custom
4x5,
props,
5x7, 4x3, like.
And so when I started, I took everything in portrait 5:4, and then I started introducing 2x1 panoramas. So I was very much either portrait 5:4 or a proper panorama where it's 2:1.
So Tim, does the 4x5 come from your background working with the medium format, or just a love of that proportion?
Just a large format, yeah. And it comes from painting as well, because a lot of canvases are sold on that format. So a lot of
if you go into like a store and you're looking for frames, everything is like 4x5 format.
Yeah,
you're not going to find many 2x3 things.
Which is weird because nothing's that format to frame
anymore. Hasn't updated.
So Eric, is this an intervention to make sure that Tim gets out and makes more photographs?
I'm starting to feel the urge. I am.
I would hope so.
This whole episode is just an intervention.
Yeah, that's the point of this.
I'm feeling a little embarrassed. So it may be working. You never know. I think I might have submitted one picture that was taken in the last 4 years.
I honestly hadn't. I don't think I'd ever been on your website before. I mean, I had seen your work somehow because you don't really post much. But like I knew you were a good photographer. But I was seeing a lot of stuff for the first time when I was looking through all your stuff.
Oh, that's fun. And you found one, which is really cool.
This one I was like, fuck yeah! As soon as I saw it, I'm like, I'm featuring this.
This was yours, Eric?
Yeah.
I like the contrast between the sharpness and the flow of the water. That's really emphasizes the separation. Sharp versus
there's a really There's a really it's coincidental thing about 5.4 in that you take a photograph at 5.4 with a decent depth of field, which means it's f16 to f32, probably f22 or f32. And with Fuji Velvia, you're taking a photograph for a second or 2 seconds, almost every time. And it's just perfect for water. It just, you leave this detail in there, but it's soft.
The only thing is, now that I know that Tim has a soft spot for the warp tool, I really need to see the raw file for this, because it was probably just like a straight line of water, and he's like,
I'm gonna get the transparency and wave it at you in a second.
Don't forget to do a video of it, because that'll be the best.
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah.
You can't lie with a video.
If it wasn't in the shed, I'd have it now.
Beautiful.
Stunning.
The depth of field here is a interesting choice.
Yeah,
I like
absolutely.
it. It's just not conventional.
I mean, that's something you can only achieve with a large format camera with bellows.
And it's only
It almost looks like tilt shift or.
There's two things going on here. It's tilt shift, but it's also using a lens that has a very, very weird plane of focus, which is actually curved.
Oh wow!
Oh wow!
It's a PS 945 lens, which is very rare. Cook lens, which was based on a design from the 1920s, which is meant for portraits. And the idea was you could get the eyes in focus, and because the depth of field came forward on the edges of the picture, the background would be really out of focus, so everything stood out. And so if you see the plane of focus goes up through the heather, hits the bottom of the trees, then goes vertical.
Yeah. Oh, so that's the shit that your beer was made out of, the first one?
Exactly, yeah.
Nice. That's a nice little tie-in.
Just through the bottom of that. Like that.
The anchor point in the bottom right corner is wonderful as it starts you into the picture and moves upwards.
Yeah, this is a lens I borrowed from Cook. It's about £2,000, unfortunately, so I never bought it, which I should have done. I regret it. But it's a soft focus lens, so it's the same lens design that was used for all the Hollywood portraits in anywhere up to the 1940s.
Wow.
For me, I love the way that it feels like the trees are like fingers coming up out of the ground, like they're like this hand reaching up out of a gravesite. Like it's very evocative in that way.
And it's got a bit of a glow about it as well in the highlights.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, it has that kind of dreamy sort of feel to it.
Yeah, luminous.
Yeah, which I think really lends itself well to this scene.
I will admit to going in there, and if you look at the grasses in the bottom left-hand corner, the verticals, I did go and prune slightly in there to simplify things a little bit,
but no warp tool, right?
No warping. I warped this little piece of grass in the bottom corner that folds over. I warped that a little bit with my thumb.
Would that be allowed in the contest?
Absolutely.
Oh, perfect. Great.
Yeah, what the fuck? I'm taking this one out. I'm cutting this one out of the episode.
You see, this one matches the beer as well because it's all the same.
I was taking a piss in the other room. I had to pinch it to come back and say that. Once I heard that, I was like, oh, no.
Not letting that go.
You just have a bucket?
This is also
one of the flask.
One of the things I like in terms of light is catching. If you're on a cloudy day and it's sunny and cloudy, is waiting for that moment when the light goes on the edge of a cloud, so you've got almost direct light,
half light,
just softened, yeah.
And it only lasts for a second or so.
Exactly, yeah, and it's beautiful, really nice.
Yeah, wish it lasted longer.
Nice. I love
That's what she said.
Yeah, boy, that was right there.
I'm still chuckling at Eric's comment. That's so funny. I got these visions of these truck drivers who use apple juice jugs.
Yeah,
when they're driving.
Then you forget if it's apple juice or.
It takes a dark twist right here now.
Like in Dumb and Dumber.
Depends how hydrated you are.
Right.
Silence.
Let's go.
Yeah, this was Jimmy's image. I don't know if he came out and said that.
No, I didn't come out and say. I wasn't sure who else
didn't.
submitted it, but yeah, I just fell in love with it right away because of the the way the focus is working and the flow through it is just phenomenal.
There's a flow right from the bottom right up through the back.
It looks windy.
I've only got 2 of my images on the wall at home, and this is one of them.
One of the things that, this is gonna sound weird, but like it almost has like a feminine feel to it. You know what I mean? Like, because it's so soft and like there's out of focus elements, and the color palette is very I don't know. It's just feels very pastel. So like I really appreciate it for those qualities.
So good.
Yeah. Speaking of which, we got to get more female guests on the show, but it hasn't been easy. So
True.
here we are.
It's tough to. It's exactly. It's tough to pay some come hang out with a bunch of beer drinking Neanderthals.
Have you had Sandra on the show?
And no, she's definitely on my list. I need to reach out to her. We're gonna have Krista McQuish pretty soon.
Ooh, I love that.
Eric, after you abused Sarah Marino and embarrassed her, I think that's one of the things you want to put on there.
Right. Like, well, blame Ron for sharing the photo of the shadow cock.
Yeah.
I felt so bad for Sarah. Show.
She loves that.
She did. She did fine with it. She's been back on since, right? I think as a
few times. Yeah.
Yeah, she came back on.
That's because Sarah's amazing.
Yeah.
I found this one. Eric, was there any conflict with this? I chose this as my first.
Nobody else chose this. No.
Okay, because I sent you 3 more after that just to make sure that we didn't have conflict. But anyway, yeah.
This is a very Richard Martin photo, by the way.
Well,
not to take anything away from Tim.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
This is so dynamic and a little bit ambiguous, so it has a lot of really interesting qualities that it engages my imagination, and sometimes it's hard to explain, but I think it's such a dynamic arrangement and composition. And once again, like I said before, there's nothing in the picture space that is wasted or distracting from the central idea for me, anyway, as a viewer. And the monochrome is wonderful.
It's not monochromatic though. I mean, those gold flakes, that blue tone of like most of the scene.
Fundamentally, it's basically sort of one hue or whatever.
Like duotone, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, it's like 4.
Those golden flakes.
It's like 4 tones, right? Black, white, gold, blue.
I don't like labels, but anyway, that's just a communication. But visual things are different. You can't explain in words, but in categories. But anyway, yeah. So I love this image, and I loved a lot of other ones, of course, too. And I remember, Eric, I submitted 3 more after that, which were quite equal to this as well. But it was hard to choose. But anyway, I like this as a discussion point.
God, I love this composition. It feels like things are getting like sucked down into this hole, and like these rocks are all that's left. To me, it's really evocative.
Mm-hmm. There's on the coast, right?
Also, there's no sense of scale, so that also engages the viewer into bringing their own background into it. And sometimes it's nice to have the viewer to interpret it on their own level.
Yeah, open for interpretation.
And that's what's exciting.
Come on, Jimmy and Mike, you got to chime in so that we can build upon this intervention of getting Tim to get out and take more pictures.
I don't think they give a shit.
Not anymore.
But I mean, both of them have so far been large format films. So there you go. This is. I need to get my darkroom finished, don't I?
Is this large format?
Yeah, this is Belvedere again.
Oh wow,
it's really cool.
You know what? I don't even see, when I look at pictures, I don't look at them as if, was this film? Was this digital? Was this large format? Was this iPhone?
I mean, it's all about the end result. Yeah.
I couldn't give a shit.
There's something about when I use a large format camera that my intentionality, my focus and intentionality gets channeled. I could do it with digital.
A lot more on the line.
Well. Yeah. I mean, I'll sit there.
Except for, your film's free, so no money on the line. It's
exactly. It's time though. You're spending the time there. You're going to develop it. You're going to scan it. You want to get it right. But the frame on a ground glass is a commitment for me, and it doesn't seem the same commitment when I use a digital camera.
Not as permanent. Not as
That's interesting.
More malleable.
Yeah, because go ahead.
My instinct when I use a digital camera is I set up for this picture. I'd get it framed and I think, well, it's free. I'll just take a quick picture now. And then I'll look on the back of the camera and go, that looks nice. And then 5 minutes later, I'll go, I've got that picture now. I'll move on.
Yeah, there's something else.
Whereas if I did it with a 5.4 camera, I'd be like, I can see the clouds traveling over the top of this, and I can see that I'm going to catch that patch of light in the bottom left-hand corner if I hang around for another 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And then I'll sit there and go, actually, now I've sat there for 10, 15 minutes. I'm going to change the frame slightly just to get the corners lined up.
So to me, that makes sense. But in my own photography, I've realized like the more I like scrutinize a scene that I'm working on, and like the more I fine tune it, the more sterile it becomes. And I usually end up with that first impression, first exposure than like the final one where I've like, you know what I mean? Well, like zooming in, rotating, like those little, like, I don't know. It doesn't necessarily get better. It kind of just gets like it loses like its soul.
But this is what happens this is exactly what happens when I use a digital camera as well. So I mean, it's just different. It's, you know, when I use a digital camera, I'll be more dynamic. I'll maybe take like more variations. And typically it's the initial reaction. Like you say, the one is the one that you want to take.
Yeah.
And so I could hang around for another hour and get the right light, but quite often the light might be right. Or the next picture will be better anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Well, that's kind of why something draws my attention, because the light is right in the moment. Like exactly. When you're not planning out scenes, and like we said earlier, when you have zero expectations, the things you notice are the things that are happening then, not something that could be cool an hour or two later. It pulls your eye because it already stands out from the landscape, which is usually
another great example of this is I know quite a few photographers who use phones. When they do large format cameras or film cameras, they'll use a phone as a compositional tool to try and work out a composition.
Immediate.
I do that all the time.
And then they come home and they find out that the phone's actually better than the film picture. And it's like, shit.
Jimmy's like, yeah, that happens a lot.
I don't know what you're talking about.
He has like a print that he sells people that was taken on the phone.
Hey, maybe more than
but yeah, that instinctive reaction is so
There's no shame in that.
No.
True, isn't it? It works.
Yeah. Tim, one of the things I like about this photo is the ambiguity of scale.
Yeah.
Like I really cannot tell if this is, you know,
that's why it's engaging.
Exactly.
Like big boulders
ambiguity.
In the middle. And I've flattened the perspective a bit as well, which plays around with that slightly.
So it allows the viewer to interpret it, like I said before, and that's what's so powerful in an image.
Yep.
Boom.
Yep.
So
Richard Martin speaks so much truth.
Well, I don't know about that, but anyway. So back in the film days, my film days, I shot with 4x5, 35 millimeter film. I had a medium format camera, and then I went to a film camera in a 35 millimeter format. And I spent so much time working with my camera, and I shot so few images that my friends were saying, "Why aren't you shooting 4x5? Because you take so long." And now that I've gone to digital, all the way to today, nothing has changed for me. I look at the viewfinder as it's all the same. The technology has changed a lot, but my thinking hasn't changed at all from 40 some years. Everything is about what's going on in that arena of the frame. And I don't think about the technology. So that part has never changed.
If you can make your eye work, that's all that matters.
It really does. Then it doesn't matter if it's a phone or what it is. It's You're framing something within a space.
The main tool is your mind.
Right.
That's why I quite like a framing device. I know Ben Horn's just put a YouTube video about that, but I love a little cardboard frame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just
I use my
hands
hands
a lot of times.
I use my hands.
I've got a friend who carries a gold sort of like picture frame.
I just like bend over and look between my legs, like.
Well, you do remember those
large format.
Talk about ambiguity of scale.
Yeah, right.
Do you
remember those books of Ansel Adams where the print and all that? There's a series of 5 books, and this was back in late 1970s, and I was reading those, and when I was beginning, and I actually cut out a format for my camera, and I use that as a viewing card. But today I use my phone to do the same thing.
You
can also use, like, movie directors have these very expensive scopes that you can visualize lenses. But it's all the same thing, but it's taking a visual inventory of what you have and then come back and repeat it with your other camera.
Yeah.
But ironically, some of the phone stuff is actually better than what I can do.
I know, it's annoying, isn't it?
There's a secret sauce in there.
I think it's because the camera sensor is so small. You can get like crazy depth of field with your phone, which is like impossible with your camera a lot of
I
times.
still prefer my Nikon though, but anyway, so.
Out of reference, those are iron pyrites, and they're about 3 millimeters across.
So I saw Tim pulled out a bottle of something. I cracked open this
Bernard
double dry hop.
Everybody was bragging about their percentage alcohol content, so this is 63.
What is that?
Is that quint-sextuple IPA?
Wait, I think you're the first person to drink hard liquor on our show, so congratulations.
It's all about alcohol.
I love it. That's awesome.
So Tim, what is that? I'm sorry, we missed it.
This is a Bunnahabhain Octomore. It's the peatiest whiskey in the world, but it doesn't taste peaty.
Hey Tim.
Sadly, I've only got that much left, and it's 250 quid a bottle.
Tim, when I'm there next year, we're gonna have to drink some of that.
Oh yeah, I'm buying some more soon.
Yes.
So I'm drinking high density hop charged oyster from Other Half. There's another one that Jimmy sent me. Citra, Citra Incognito, Centennial Cryal, Citra. So it's just like Citra and Centennial hops, but lots of different forms of them. So very concentrated.
It looks very camp.
Yeah, just 6%, but pretty flavorful. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed that one. I wish I had a few more of those. But so Tim, I have a bottle of Ardbeg sitting in the basement.
Ardbeg's nice. Yeah, definitely.
It's a
peaty.
Corey Reckon.
Corey Reckon, yeah. It's great. It's a nice one.
It's about
not far from me, Corey Reckon.
Oh yeah?
It's a whirlpool. Kills a lot of people.
I'm just waiting for Tim to drink enough where he stops doing the accent.
So who chose this picture of Tim's?
That was me.
Oh, cool.
You like this one, Matt?
Yeah, the backlighting.
I'm a sucker for backlit scenes, especially like fall color, leaves, yellow, orange.
Oh, all that rim lighting, right?
Yeah, all that rim lighting is just fantastic, and
a bit of frost on the birch.
Well, the structure of the image to me is very fascinating because it's hard to tell exactly what the scale is, and it's hard to tell lots of different aspects of this image. But I love that backlit, like the illuminating, the leaves are illuminated, and just that central point of light that kind of draws you back in, but it has all these other points coming out like in a radial fashion. And to me, this is for sure one of my favorite images that you've captured, Tim.
Cheers.
So So Matt, were you drawn into the light like a moth? Just like
well, I mean, definitely backlit. Like I love
it's powerful.
But like leaves backlit is probably one of my favorite subjects in nature. Is
it's so luminous, right?
Like I'm trying to think.
They're kind of transparent.
Yeah, like 3 years ago, for whatever reason, I discovered backlit leaves on my own, like with a 100 to 400 lens, and I was like, "Wow, this is incredible!" And so, like every year I go out, I'm looking for backlit trees at sunrise, and I love it as a subject.
We don't
I think
often see that. We don't often look at that, so that's a different presentation, but it's very dramatic. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's different than what you see day to day.
This was an interesting one because this is the first time I used color negative film on my 5.4 camera.
Wow.
Just because the dynamic range is ridiculous.
I was just going to say dynamic range, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is, you wouldn't tell looking directly into the sun, but you can just get that gorgeous gradation of the light. There's no clipping.
So as someone that never took film seriously, what do you mean color negative? Like why?
Print film, as you'd know it. So you've either got transparency film, which is slide film that you can just pick up and hold up to the sky and you can see the picture, or you got the stuff that looks orange when you get it back and you need to have a print done of it before you can see the color. So if the actual piece of film here is just like a piece of orange filter with an image vaguely imprinted on it. So it needs either scanning or printing to get the color out.
To reveal it, yeah.
But
So Eric, you can translate that to a JPEG is similar to a transparency film, and a raw file is similar to the qualities of a negative, right? A negative, whether it's black and white negative or color negative, right?
yeah, the Kodak invented this process and being able to say, okay, well, we're going to have, in order to get most color pictures, you need 3 colors. So, CMY, or however it's done, pretty much CMY. In black and white film, they developed a triple layer process where you can have a sensitive layer, a medium layer, and a fast layer in the film. So Tri-X does this, and quite a few of the modern films do it, which means you can accumulate, each layer would have about 6 stops of dynamic range. So by the time you add the 3 together, you get 18 stops of dynamic range. So black and white film, modern black and white film, you can't overexpose pretty much. You can just let it go forever. And it just means you get more dynamic range that you can get from a digital camera, definitely. Maybe phase cameras are pretty close. You can't do that with a slide film. You can only do it with the negative film because of the way it adds up. And so the Portra 400, which is used in cinematography, like in Shogun, that's shot on film. Some of it's digital, bits of it's film. You can build these layers up again. So this has 9 layers, so three layers of different speed films to build up this dynamic range. So you can see into these deep shadows, but still you only get the speck of the sun in the center, which means you can recover the color in the deep shadows. Which
Well,
is
for
what I
me-
like.
Christ, dude, this is Brews and Views, man. That was like, just say it's fucking money. Like,
Wow.
No.
You asked, Derek. You started the whole process.
well, in one ear, out the other, and
I'll get really geeky and say the reason that I love the way this works as well is because all these leaves on this trees and a few of the trees I was looking at, they're not on a flat plane. So this is taken at the equivalent of f1.4. So you've got no depth of field, as you can tell by the out of focus background trees. But because I've got tilts and shifts, I can try and find a plane somewhere in the picture where I can put all these leaves in the right focus. And then I just pulled all the other leaves off the tree, so it's just those are left.
So that's what I was gonna say, Tim. Is what drew me to this photograph is the plane of focus and the depth of field, because it's so unusual. You have things that are in the front that are in focus, but also things that are in the back that are in focus, which is
it's
so
like in
unusual.
focus, but it's not.
Yeah. So like that's what drew me to the image.
It's either in focus or it isn't. I love that huge contrast.
But Matt, it plays on your emotional response, right?
Boom.
Yeah.
And that's what really matters. And to
Hormonal
Eric,
response.
if you want to think about it this way, after all these beers, let's say you were forced to go out forever and photograph JPEGs with your digital camera. You would have to think the same as a photographer would have to think with transparencies, because if you blow out highlights, they're gone forever.
Right.
Same with JPEGs, and I've shot a lot of transparency, but in raw files, my thinking is the same as my thinking for when I shot black and white negatives, and you expose in a different way, and then you develop it back. So. Yeah, so that's an interesting analogy. I don't know, Tim, if you think that's similar with your film.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So raw files are like negatives and JPEGs are like transparencies, whereas the highlights are gone forever if you miss them, and you have to sacrifice for all the rest. You have a limitation. So with digital, you don't have limitations like that.
Here's a really interesting thing about transparency film, though. Transparency film has pretty much 4 stops of dynamic range.
Yeah.
It's actually got 9 stops, but it's got 4 stops that you can see. You can see a little bit of detail on the shadows, a little bit of detail on the highlights. If you look at a piece of paper with a picture on it, it has about 4 or 5 stops of dynamic range. So when you take a picture on transparency film, it looks like reflected light. It looks like a picture. So if you take that and then put it on a print, it looks natural. The light looks like you would see with your naked eye.
Okay.
So when you're working with slide film, you have to sit there and wait until you get soft light. You're waiting for those clouded, overcast moments and stuff. which means when you put it on paper, it has a natural luminosity. You know, it's like if you try and take something really dynamic range and print it, it just looks flat and horrible.
Right.
Whereas if you sit there and wait for the scene to have a low dynamic range, the print can look fantastic. And that, a lot of intimate photographs work because of that, because in a lot of intimate photographs, you're just working in a soft light.
It's like one level of lighting. Yeah, there's not
exactly. Yeah,
Right.
different intensities.
and I think that's why it can look quite
Luminous.
inviting, luminous. Yeah,
Yeah, that's probably why I was focusing on for all my career was I focused on smaller scenes for some reason like that, but because of what my limitations were. But
yeah,
yeah,
they print so well.
I feel like you can really
right?
accentuate lighting through more, tighter compositions. You can
So it's all
make
about what you
ordinary
can-
lighting look very remarkable.
Yeah, it's what you can control. I mean, if Ansel Adams had experienced digital color raw files, he would have loved it because he wanted control, 100% control over development. And you didn't have that necessarily with transparency, or I don't know if it was color
No.
negative sound. But
When you
anyway,
look at when you look at Charlie Kramer's work, and you see these pictures that are just finding those moments of soft light that work in a reflected print format.
yeah.
So we had a three-way with this one. Both me, Richard, and Mikey had selected this one. So
I got to it first.
ended
that's
up being
pretty cool.
Mikey's. Yeah.
I got to it first. Yeah,
Roadwild got sloppy seconds.
pretty much like usual.
It's 5-4 again.
I was last because I just found out about this last night as I went to bed.
Yeah. Thank you. By the way, I was
Yeah.
thrilled that you said yes. It was just kind of a Hail Mary.
I almost didn't check, but just as I was going to bed at 11:30 at night, I looked at my Instagram and said, "Oh my God, here's a message from Eric." And anyway,
Yeah,
so
you
go
have
ahead.
alerts on for me, so it was like bing, 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 like an alarm went off when I.
Well, normally he
sent it to
just deletes it, but he was like, maybe
Yeah.
there's something here, yeah.
This
Without even reading it.
I love this image. Wow.
Yeah, no, I love this image for so many reasons.
Look at
First of all, I think like the frosty fern, it's so rare that you see this color combination in it, and I think that's what immediately stuck out to me. But the detail is phenomenal, and I love the lines in it. This, the parallel stems, and then obviously the branch points, and then just the way that subject one in the center was kind of cradled by the other ones that are the kind of bluish purple color. Just everything about it works, and on top of that, it's just so unique. I think because of the colors. Normally, you get by the time you're taking frosty ferns, they're brown and red, and have those kind of earthy tones. So I love that the kind of cooler palette to this makes it feel colder. And definitely imparts that feeling of winter.
I could look at this forever. It's just amazing.
Oh, and
It's
green and purple are complementary colors.
It's very strange how that one fern was just not frosted in the same way.
Well, that's what makes the scene. I'm sure that's what you noticed.
Yeah, it just
Slightly defrosted. You were breathing on it for like 10 minutes, like.
I might have done.
So where I live in Canada, this is a typical November. November is amazing for this kind of frost. And after all the hurrah goes away from the color in the trees, which I'm not so interested in, is what's on the ground. It's like November for me is like, people look at me like I'm alien when I say November is my favorite month because it's so gray, but people are talked into being that, oh my God, it's a gray month. So I wish people didn't just look at the obvious and look at the in-between notes, but November, where I live, is just the best time for this kind of thing, and the quality of
these
light.
little cold wells that you get where the cold just settles on the ground and freezes everything night after night.
This separates.
November is my favorite too, because the desert, that's like when the fall is most colorful.
It separates photographers that are creative when you can find ordinary scenes that even in ditches like this that are so beautiful. And that's what I find interesting in terms of how creative you are to find images and not the obvious places, right? So
Right.
Anyway, I love this image.
Again, transparency, very low contrast. You didn't need to do anything it's not a challenging picture to take
So you
Right.
work with the properties of your material, right? Like a
Yeah.
just
Well,
learn
you have
learn
that
the
natural
limitations.
contrast regardless of the light with the frosty white edges giving you nice separation here.
A little bit of I mean, it's an early morning. The sky's just turning blue after the color's gone, so you got a little bit of coolness to it. Yeah, I love frost. I really do. Yeah,
Yeah, my favorite memories are going out in November.
crisp days.
Even though
This was
tell
in
you that-
Scotland then, Tim?
This wasn't. This was in a place called the Strid, which is in Yorkshire. So it's a very deep V-notched river gorge, and the sides of it, all the bracken just collapses down as it dies, come fall. But it collects the cold, like another cold well. So it's just you get these days where it gets. In Britain, we have we talk about the weather so much because we have 5 influenced weather systems. So we can have southern from the Atlantic African, so we get warm tropical. We can get landmass African, which is dry desert. We can get Russian Siberian, which is cold and dry. We can get northern, which is wet and cold, and we can get Icelandic and stormy, which comes over from Greenland. So as these weather forms shift during the year, you get these. It might have been damp for a whole week, then all of a sudden it turns to dry freezing, and these things happen. So it's
really
quite
cool.
fun.
It's a great
Very
combination.
volatile.
Yeah.
And Scotland very much so, because Scotland's just the raw weather coming from every direction.
Yeah, this one's really nice.
Wow. Yeah, it's the kind of picture you could live with, as I said before, you could live with for a very long time, which is a true test.
It really is.
Thank you.
I think the viewer brings their own life experience to it, and it all depends on what you're exposed to, and it's all subjective as well. But yeah, for me anyway, this speaks really strongly.
Ferns are my favorite plant, so
I do have to ask, Tim, do you have any grand scenic images that you've captured that you're proud of?
yeah, right here, bitch.
Oh,
So I picked this one. As everybody had picked like vertical intimate scenes, so I was like,
You guys
playing
playing that?
different.
we didn't
It is.
actually. That's what's crazy.
What timing, Matt? Were you guys talking to each other?
Guess where I found this too, on fucking Flickr.
Did you? There you go.
Graveyard. Yeah.
Wow, I remember
Damn.
seeing this. Yeah.
That's sick.
Wow.
Yeah, this is if you look at the hill to the right-hand side, there's a little blob of black, and my house is just behind there.
Wow.
Look at that one frosty boulder and how that like brown layer is like the spacing is like just enough. That's very intentional.
This is
Yeah,
awesome.
The warm tones and that mist coming up in the central part. Wow, that's nice.
Yeah.
And the clouds, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really nice. There's like a great example of a grand landscape that is very it's like simplified, and it's all about the layering here.
Yeah.
Really nice.
Hmm.
It's
It's
like an
also-
intimate grand landscape.
The
color-
snow helps reduce the chaos of it too.
I
Yeah,
was gonna say the colors of the sky is like got like a tinge of yellow.
Mm-hmm. Cool to warm from the bottom to
little
the top
bit, yeah.
edge.
Right. Exactly.
So if Paul was here, he would say, "This is the shit."
Yeah, this is
Right.
fucking money.
And then he would pass out.
This is so fucking money. This is sick. This is fucking sick.
I gotta
Smoke a
see
cigarette.
Paul. I gotta meet up with him when I go to Olympic.
Oh,
Yeah,
I
we
love
will.
Bowman. Bowman's the best.
We'll talk.
He's
Eric,
like the
about
best
that.
guy ever.
We'll talk later about that, Eric. Yeah.
I'm a sucker for the hills around here because we have this coastal cold weather where the valleys will have no snow. So I'm at about 1,000 meters here, and it's like permanent freezing. But you get this slight thaw freeze going up the valleys, and so you end up with snow about halfway up. This is about 500-meter mark where the snow starts, and so you just get
This
this
is like
interest
porn for
all the way
Alex
through.
now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
In fact, I do believe I might have been out with Alex when I took this.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
So Alex runs a workshop. He was running it every year. I think he's running it every couple of years recently, where he comes out with a bunch of people and takes a guide out. And he says, "Do you fancy coming along for a walk?" So I think I came out with him.
Is this one film, or I would suspect this is digital?
This is digital. Yeah, Sony A7R.
Yeah, I need to give in at some point.
Yeah. I'm not carrying a large format up there. Actually, no, to be fair, the large format I use is about the same weight as my Sony. It's just a pain in the arse when it's blowing about 100 mile an hour winds.
Mm-hmm.
True.
And you can see from the rime ice how strong it's been blowing.
I like how there's that visual flow from like bottom left to top right too. That's very subtle because the layers start to cluster up more in the top right.
Yeah.
Everything's like spaced out more in the bottom left. It just gets like more and more concentrated, leading you into that.
This is all about the arc of rocks there in the bottom, in the left. All those 5 rocks connect to each other in a way like a little family.
There's a great example too how like you don't need to find like a waterfall and wildflowers and a mountain goat for like a foreground and a wide angle scene too. Like
Or
you just have rocks with snow on them, you know, like nothing
crazy, fucking sick, epic clouds, light. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
very tasteful.
doesn't
Those
have to be
clouds
in
are
your face.
fantastic there. The way it's just a little bit of tonality, but
A little
not,
bit of tobacco color in them.
it's not slapping in the face, but it's just occupying a certain part of the tonality. But it's not like over exaggerated.
It's not the subject matter, but it's enough to.
But it
keep
holds it
interesting.
together.
Yeah.
It encompasses the whole thing, right? It doesn't let your eye go out to the top. Yeah.
This is one of those classic locations on the top of the mountain where the clouds are just coming and going all the time. So you're trying to find that balance between. I'm just about a whole mass of clouds is just about to come in from the left.
I think places that have changeable weather are most exciting, right? That you have constant.
super dynamic.
It feels like hunting, feels like sport.
Yeah. I go to Newfoundland.
It's
every
hard
year.
to like stop shooting too because it keeps changing like every 2 minutes.
Right.
You get
Like
stuck.
I go to Newfoundland every year, and I'm doing workshops coming up very soon. And the thing about that place is that it's always changing the clouds. There's high winds, and the clouds are constantly different. And that's so exciting because where I live is not always that changeable, but it's because of the high winds and the proximity. So Tim, you mentioned Alex all the time. What is Alex's last name?
Nail.
How do you
Nail.
spell that?
Oh man.
Okay.
You like Alex's work. Alex has got 2 good books you can look at.
Okay, yeah. I just why are you saying that, Matt? You think I should know? Are you laughing at me?
Yeah, you'll like the work. He's top notch mountain photographer.
You got 2 amazing books. One is Northwest. Awesome.
Okay.
His most
I couldn't get
recent
that one
book
before it sold out.
Is The Great Wilderness. Also
There's
amazing.
some copies around that one.
And he's from Scotland, or
No, he's from.
He's
Where's
very
he from?
He's an English bloke.
his
He's
work
an English.
is
Yeah.
very very tasteful. But he did this he did all the calligraphy for this map that illustrates where he took all the photographs, which is ridiculous.
He's from a little place called Bath, which is right in the south. But he spends his time looking at the weather and going, "I'm going to spend a week in Scotland sometime in the next 4 weeks." And oh my God, the weather's looking good. I'm going to go up. Oh, it's shit. Which is classic Scottish weather.
He's like as a photographer, he's like a purist in like the purest form, but in a good way.
right?
Agree. Yeah, that's a good description.
Yeah, not like in a annoying way. If that makes sense.
It does. Hey, Tim, so compositionally,
Yeah.
for me, what makes or breaks this photograph is that little rock, lower third, almost on the edge of the frame.
On the left-hand side. Yeah.
Yeah, with the horizon on it. Like that just anchors everything.
Yeah.
Like if that wasn't there, I feel like
It'd be
the
empty.
composition. Yeah. Yeah.
If it was just those 5 rocks connected together in that little arc, it would be empty on the left-hand side of the frame, like you say.
Yes.
I
a great
like
point.
I always try and find something like that on the edge of a frame. So the few rocks on the right-hand side of the frame do the same thing in a way.
Are
Yeah,
those
but
like
they're-
three dark diagonal lines, like gorges, or are those lakes, or like in
These
the,
are
in the
fo-
misty,
it's-
like
it's,
brown section?
We have atrocious forestry in Scotland. So during the war, the government paid huge amounts of money for people to go out and plant forests around the
Oh,
country.
those are trees.
So these are little plantations of trees. Yeah. And they're all maturing now, so they're all being chopped down at the same time. So the whole of Scotland is chainsaws everywhere.
Wow. Just like everywhere in the world, right?
Sadly, yeah.
So when you look at if you squint at this, you can see the distribution of the darker tones and the way they move through the picture space. But that's really important, right? The way it sort of contrast and binds it together.
That cloud in the center was really important when I was taking it, because this area, the brown area in the middle, would be really, really quite contrasty and bold.
Right.
If it wasn't that little cloud going past and moderating it, because that would take the attention at the back of the picture.
So you composited that fog in?
Obviously.
Painted it in, yeah, clone painting, and
I think it's about 17 exposures all blended together from different
nice,
days.
yeah,
Right.
Oh,
with
exactly.
pixel shift and 32-bit lossless.
The clouds are from South America, and then
It's like the UN of photographs.
Wow.
Amazing.
Good stuff.
Yeah, good time, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for
that
that.
was the fastest 7 hours I've ever experienced.
What?
You might have
7
inspired me to go out
hours?
and
I'll
take a
try to
picture.
cut this down to 3.5.
Good luck with
Tim,
that.
you're gonna run out with your camera?
I might go out with a camera. I do have a darkroom. I've been building a darkroom in my shed, which is like,
Wow.
I've got an ATL automatic developing machine, but I've flooded 4 houses in the past and had to make big insurance claims by screwing things up. So I'm very scared about actually switching the plumbing on.
Oh, really?
That's hilarious.
So it wasn't natural flooding.
The first one was the guy who put the central heating knocked the overflow off our tank in the loft, and when I put my darkroom in, it didn't have reverse flow blocks. So when I turned the tap on, the cold water under pressure went up and filled the hot water tank in the roof, which then overflowed. It would have just gone out the side of the building, but it flooded our office and wrecked all the computers.
Holy
And then
shit,
man.
man.
The next house I went into, I had a shower mixer for the hot and cold in the dark room again. And the shower mixer on Christmas Day, I didn't turn the taps off and it blew up. And so I had full hot and cold water for overnight for 8 hours, filling the whole of the downstairs floor of the house.
Jeez.
And so I'm a bit worried about.
Yeah, this is all very
Little
concerning
gunshot.
as your business partner to hear this.
Because Charlotte would kill me if it happens again.
Wow.
What happened to all of our year 4 books? Oh, they're underwater.
Exactly. The second time, all of Tim Rudman's a really good black and white photographer, the guy I was talking about who did the lith printing, and all of his artwork was in a box on the floor floating.
Oh, God.
Sucks.
Scary. So, yeah, I'm going to drill a hole in the floor before I turn the water on.
Yeah, put a drain in there.
Yeah,
The water's not your friend then.
no, I don't like water. Beer and whiskey, different.
There you go.
There's a component of water in those, right?
Yeah, water of life. Thank you for choosing
Awesome.
those pictures.
Wow.
Yeah,
thanks for,
absolutely. Thanks for sharing and telling us about them.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, and all the
yes.
stuff that you brought to the table from other guys.
Yeah.
That was really great.
Good episode,
Enjoyed it.
Bennett.
No, I enjoyed
That's-
that. How long was it?
really-
Nice. I think it'll be 3 hours and change. Not as long as David Thompson's, maybe as long as Alex Noriega's.
Yeah,
Who
that makes
holds the
sense.
record for the longest one? Is it Alex?
David
David
Thompson.
Thompson, I'm pretty sure, is like 3 hours, 45 minutes.
Wow.
That sounds right.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why was that? Just because of?
Have you met David?
Oh yeah, I met David at Big Sur conference, and what a cool guy.
Oh, he's amazing.
Every
Yeah,
time I
yeah.
ran into him, he's so complimentary to me. So it's nice.
He's
Yeah,
the best.
He's the man.
He's a
the
great
best.
guy.
He's such a cool guy, and that's the cool thing about doing these conferences, that I get to meet all the people that I have been connected with on Zoom and out of Chicago conferences, and to meet them in the real. And every single person I've met are exactly like I thought they were from the Zoom, so it wasn't any surprise. So I get to meet Eric. I get to meet Eric in person next fall.
Yeah,
And-
maybe before then somehow, but at
Heads
least.
up, that'll be a big letdown.
Yeah.
So Jimmy, are you going?
He's
to
going to be
that?
your first.
Are you going to that, Jimmy?
I wish I could, but
You were joking to me about driving out there. I thought, holy shit, that's a long drive.
Just don't let
Where
him
you-
sleep in your tent with you.
no, it's my teaching gig between September and June is not
It's a
complimentary.
bit
to much.
restrictive.
I love what you're doing in the Adirondacks, because that's not too far from where I live. I mean, it's like 3 hours for me.
Yeah, no, it's all. I mean, it's huge. It's like
I know it's
Oh.
a beautiful area.
huge area. I feel like
I didn't realize
it's
how close I am to you. I didn't realize how,
yeah.
Where
yeah, just
are
a few
you,
hours.
Richard?
I'm in the Thousand Islands, so I'm on
Oh,
the
okay,
borderline.
yeah.
So if I was
Yep, I know exactly where you are.
if I was to drive east of where I live for 30 minutes, I can cross the bridge to Highway 81, and I could be in New York City in 6 hours. I'm also
Yeah.
6 hours drive to Chicago. It's all weird. In Boston, it's probably 5 hours. Anyway, so I'm in that central area where you guys are kind of in that zone.
How about Ottawa for you?
Oh, Ottawa's an hour and a half north of me.
Oh wow, jeez.
Montreal is
about.
two and a half
How far
hours.
is
Like
it? Yeah, so if you're 2.5 hours from Montreal, you're about 4 hours from me.
Yeah, 2.5 hours. I could be downtown Montreal, and basically the same as Toronto. As
4.5.
well. So I'm in,
Yeah.
There's just
I'm on the
nothing
end of
straight
Lake
between
Ontario.
you and I, Mike. Like it's just
Yeah, no, I know. It's such a pain in the ass.
fucking Adirondacks.
we should get
and
together
lakes and shit.
sometime. Somehow.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Somewhere.
Did anybody
yeah,
come to
for
workshops in Scotland ever?
Oh, I haven't.
I would
Like,
love to.
I'll
fa-
do
my
it if you want
father-
to bring me out.
My father was
Yeah.
born in Scotland, and I have family there, so I should be doing stuff there. But
Well, we used to organise conferences. We did three years in a row. We did ones in the Lake District and had a bunch of photographers on. All the videos are online for them.
Let's bring it back.
And I've been
Do it.
thinking about doing one in Scotland.
I'm thinking that if I do a
Let's fucking
workshop,
go.
if I do a workshop in Scotland, I want to work with a photographer that's from the area, so that
Yeah.
we would
Yeah.
have- I generally do that in locations. I work with somebody.
I've been
from
there
the area.
before, Richard, so
Oh, have you?
count on me. Yeah.
Sure. Okay.
West
Freezing
Island.
your ass off in your
Wait a minute.
frozen Levi's
Wait a
and
minute.
Vans.
I heard about you freezing and hypothermia, right? So,
You can all
On,
stay in my
uh,
climbing wall. Be fine.
On
Yeah.
that same trip, I went to Iceland and we hiked out to a hot spring. And on the hike out, it was like completely snowy. I fell through some ice into water, like up to my waist.
wow.
And so when we got in the hot springs, like I took all my clothes off and shit. And then when I got out of the hot springs, it was time to put my clothes back on. My pants were frozen solid
Frozen
to
solid.
the point where I could like stand them up by themselves. And I had, I ended up having to
Christ.
dip them into the hot springs just to thaw them enough to be able to put them back on again. Same with my boots too. It was
Oh my
so horrible.
god, that must have been miserable.
It was insane. Yeah.
That sounds really inspiring.
Yeah.
So, Eric, are you saying that you would co-lead a trip with me in Scotland? Is that what you're saying?
Let's do it, man. I'm like 40% Scottish.
Local fixer.
So
I
I've
have-
got
Yeah.
I'm
I've got the
80%
free pass.
Scottish.
nice. Yeah,
I'm
so there we go.
120% Scottish.
Yeah, I was gonna say between the two,
120%,
you're
that's-
120%.
That's amazing. 120%. Oh,
I'm about
so-
63% Scottish now, to be honest.
Oh, right, yeah. So,
There you go.
Tim, do you know Greg Stewart from Kozu?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I had a 2-hour Zoom meeting with him a couple of weeks ago.
He's a nice guy. He's doing
Yeah,
good,
really nice.
good work.
Really nice guy, yeah.
Wouldn't
He's
print
been
our
trying to
book.
get in touch with me, so I was so busy with deadlines that I met with him a couple weeks ago, and we had a really
Cool.
good conversation. So
Famous for saying, if you don't get on board with them NFTs, you'll be irrelevant.
pardon? What was that?
That's
that
what
Greg?
he said.
Could you repeat that again, Pat?
If you don't get on board with NFTs, you'll become irrelevant. That's what he put on Twitter.
Who did? Greg did?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. I don't know. I don't go on Twitter much because it's such a a right wing
X.
platform.
It's a hot mess.
Well, this was before X.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
To be
before
fair,
it
one-
went down. Before it
To be
went
fair,
down
one of
into
his
the garbage.
friends made 1.5 million on NFTs in the previous year.
One of the 15 people who made money.
Yeah,
on NFTs.
exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, he's doing great stuff with with books anyway. So
He believes in
Yeah.
it all. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
I like Hans Strand and all those.
He
guys.
looked at our book and said we're too cheap. He can't make any money out of what we do. Our books should be selling for about 150 quid if he wants to make any money on them.
Well, to be fair, we don't make money on them either.
Well,
That's
you're
what you
not,
say.
I mean, you're not in the business
You're
to
right,
make
aren't you?
money from books, are you? You're in the business like you have fees and so on that come from the photographers, right? So
Yeah, our books cost a lot to print, but they're
of
good.
course they do. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
books are really expensive too, and it depends on how many you print, too, right? Yeah. So anyway, cool.
Good
Good
stuff.
shit, you guys.
Yeah.
I don't know who still has beer left, but cheers, everybody. That was
Thanks,
awesome.
Josh.
Tiny bit.
Not disappointing.
Even the bottle's nearly gone.
Chug it, Tim.
I have a little bit of a urine sample left here.
There you go.
Cheers, guys. Nice meeting
See-
y'all.
See you all in
See you
Scotland.
guys.
Great to talk to you. I'll
Mr.
be in
Reverend
touch.
over there. That was sneaky.
Love it.
Boom.